What does this mean for Trump's candidacy for the presidency? And what does it mean to the tens of millions of people who appear to still support him? Remember, this new indictment, or these new indictments, is on top of the 34 felony counts in New York, after which Trump's numbers grew. They didn't diminish. There was the E. Jean Carroll sex abuse ruling, potential new case there, not to mention likely additional criminal charges in Georgia over attempting to overturn the election results, and possibly more federal charges concerning the January 6th insurrection. So this is a special day, not just for our show, but for the country. We're going to be talking about this for much of today's show. We'll hear from Rick Steves in a bit about the importance of defending democracy. He's an historian in addition to a travel leader. We'll be joined by media maven Sue O'Connell on the political aspects of all this, and retired federal judge Nancy Gertner will join us at 12:30 on the mountains of legal implications. But we're starting with you at 877-301-8970. You can call or text. How are you reacting? What are the political implications? What are the implications for our country? And the first thing I'll say to Marjorie, the criminal charges are no longer imminent, Marjorie.
No,
they have
put
happened.
That to rest.
They have happened.
We were all making fun of the adjective imminent because we were using it for weeks, talking about the charges out of New York, and it was dragging and dragging and dragging on. These were really quick. You know, not to ruin the mood here, Jim, but I just opened the text messages, and I am deluged with text messages from listeners who are telling me to, they're congratulating me, actually, because today is the 50th anniversary of Secretariat winning the Triple Crown in 1973.
Thank you.
So thank you very much to everyone who shared in my joy of Secretariat winning the Triple Crown 50 years ago today.
By the way, what I said before is it obviously shows the justice system works. We have no idea if Donald Trump's going to be convicted or whether he should be. That'll be for a jury or juries to decide. This jury will obviously be somewhere in Florida. But there's a real question what it does to democracy. What I said before is true. After he was indicted on 34 felony counts by Alvin Bragg in Manhattan in New York City, his poll numbers grew. His lead over DeSantis grew. And after you're charged criminally by the Department of Justice for a ton of things, including, as I said, conspiracy and obstruction of justice, are there going to be more supporters like there were several weeks ago? Are people finally going to say this person is not fit to be the leader of the United States of America?
Again, I think, and maybe I'm being overly optimistic, that it is one thing to be indicted and face charges about paying money to a porn star,
I agree with that, I think.
And cheating on your marriage. We know that Bill Clinton obviously was cheating on people left and right, and the American people didn't really want to hear about it. I think when the word espionage comes forward, and when you have a tape, as the prosecutors reportedly have, of Donald Trump holding up a document. We're not sure if he's holding it up because it's an audio tape, but he's in Bedminster talking to people in the course of the Mark Meadows biography, people that were researching the biography of Mark Meadows, or writing the biography of Mark Meadows, and he's holding up this document, allegedly, that contains information about invading Iran. And he's saying, I couldn't classify this because I'm no longer the president of the United States. I mean, he's almost admitted to the crime on tape. So, and that obviously, Iran is one of our longtime enemies. I think that is a different level of seriousness. It's secret military information that could be used against us and is very scary. I think that's different. But again, I could be wrong.
Well, let's say you are wrong. Let's say you are wrong, and his whatever it is, 52 to 22 lead over DeSantis tomorrow morning, the next day, is another 4 points. That conservatives in this country, conservative is not even the right word, radicals gravitate to a guy who's now been indicted, not just for the Stormy Daniels stuff, but for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and all these things. What happens if they say, he's standing up to the government, he's standing up to the man? This makes us want him even more. What happens to democracy then?
Well, I think he may likely be the nominee. I don't know, because there's going to be so many trials going on. I mean, we're talking about trials that could be going on in the summer of 2024. But Biden beat him last time. I know people aren't thrilled with Biden in a lot of quarters. I think he's too old to be the president. Biden beat him in 2020. I don't think there's any way he's not going to beat him in 2024, particularly with all of this.
I can't believe you're so casual about this.
I don't think...
He's indicted in New York, and his numbers grow.
Again, he was indicted for paying off a porn star because he had an affair. That's different.
It is different.
Than having secrets from the military that could put people in danger, including, I think most people are very proud of the troops of the United States of America, and they don't want to see in any way those troops put in jeopardy. And when you're talking about these, waving them around at your Bedminster, New Jersey golf club, it's not a good look, Jim.
Can we add one thing to this also? One of the things where I appear to be much more troubled than Marjorie is, Ron DeSantis, his primary rival, criticizes the justice system for being weaponized against Donald Trump. The Speaker of the House, McCarthy, comes to his defense in his typical sycophantic lapdog kind of way. And here's what Trump said. Truth Social is his sort of Twitter. Listen to the language he used. And if this is not incitement 2.0 when he talks about warfare, listen to just a little bit of the 4 minutes of video that Trump posted last night.
They come after me because now we're leading in the polls again by a lot, against Biden and against the Republicans by a lot. But we're leading against Biden by a lot, a tremendous amount. And we went up to a level that they figure the way they're going to stop us is by using what's called warfare. And that's what it is. This is warfare for the law. And we can't let it happen. We can't let it happen. Our country is going to hell.
We can't let it happen. We can't let it happen, says a guy who is pretty famous for a call to arms on the part of his troops. Let's see what happens in the streets. Let's see what happens in the ballot box. 877-301-8970.
Obviously be facing serious charges involving the January 6th insurrection, although the legal experts say that's going to be much harder than this one, which seems, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems pretty slam dunky to me. We'll see when we talk to Nancy Gertner about this. Dan from Burlington, you are first on the Donald Trump indictment hour. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, guys. Hey, I just wanted to make a connection between the Hillary Clinton email server and this document.
Yeah, I'm dying to hear this one. Go ahead.
Well, listen. Well, let me just say up front, I'm not a big Donald Trump fan, but I would like to say that at the time, the DOJ or the FBI, I think it was Comey, had said that they were able to charge Hillary Clinton for some of the things that happened with her server, but I think they did what was right at the time and decided not to for the sake of the country and the election. And I think that this particular incident just reeks of political theater, even though no one really likes Donald Trump and everyone wants him out.
Excuse me, reeks of political theater, which means it's not real. What part of what you read about in the last 18 hours about the 7 charges against Trump appear to be political theater as opposed to fact-based, based upon what I'm sure you've been reading for months and months, Dan? Where's the political theater?
Well, it's based solely on the fact that he's a former president of the United States, whether people like him or not. And it's better overall for the country and the office not to bring former presidents.
Well, that's a different, that's a different issue. That's not political theater.
May I say something?
Of course.
Dan, I don't think that's what Comey said. I think Comey said that she was very, very careless, that we're not crimes here, is what he said. Remember, there were 2 investigations, one right before, the second thing right before the election, where he came out, went back and looked at her emails and again. So I don't think, that's not my recollection of what Comey said. But anyway, I think the thing is, Dan, that's different is that we have never had, we had Richard Nixon with Watergate, obviously. We've never had someone take documents intentionally, which it seems pretty clear he did. He's admitted it himself, basically, and not give them back. And they involved top secret things involving Iran and war.
Dan,
you know what I mean? Isn't this a different level than even if you did think Hillary Clinton did a bad thing with her emails?
I really don't want to do this Hillary Clinton thing today, with all due respect, Dan. If you want, okay.
You can just let him answer the question.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so I think that there are some parallels with the Hillary Clinton server because she did destroy the server before anyone really understood exactly what was on there.
Dan, last question from me, if I may. Let's assume it's political theater, as you say, and the facts are what the facts are, but for the good of the country or whatever the hell you said, you don't charge a former president. What's the license that gives to the next Donald Trump to do whatever the hell he or she pleases in violation of law? Just go for it?
Yeah, that's certainly a fair point. And I'm not saying I can predict the future, but I guess what I am saying is that there are some parallels, and
we heard you.
It's unfortunate all the way around.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your call. 877-301-8097.
Let me just say his recitation of the facts are different than what I recall.
Say it again.
Well, as I said, I didn't think there were that Comey did not come to the conclusion that he talked about. He came to the conclusion of it. Anyway, 877-301-8970 is the number if you want to call us or text us about the indictment of former President Donald Trump. Shingley in Lexington, thanks for calling.
Hi, Shingley.
Hi.
Hi.
To your earlier question about the impact of polls, I don't think this will have an impact on the poll numbers because the supporters that are left are faith-based and not motivated by reason. They don't believe in reason and evidence as a methodology. I think they believe that reason is overthinking things by, East Coast Ivory Tower liberal, and they've been tricked by it, and they're not going to fall for it again. So instead, they stick to what they believe in, their gut feelings, what they call common sense. And then we have seen, as you pointed out, case after case after case, where that group has consistently twisted any kind of evidence to support what they believe in, rather than to inform what they believe in. Now, my hope, however, is that the electorate, the swing voters, are a different story. That they
absolutely. I'm with you, Shingley.
Well, can I say to both you, Shingley, and Marjorie, let's assume you're both right. The swing voters do the responsible thing. To me, it's not just about outcomes next November. If 70 million people or 68 million people continue to embrace the candidacy of a guy who is credibly accused of serious crimes against this country, what's that mean for the state of this democracy? I mean, what does that mean?
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be fewer than 70 million the next time around. I mean, I just think when you there's a cult thing going on here. I mean, we have
what thing?
A cult thing going on with Donald Trump, and he's a very persuasive guy, and he's got a lot of charisma, and I think people get sucked into that cult. We've all heard stories about people that believe these cult leaders, and they did commit a mass suicide with themselves and their children. So there's these kind of, I'm not comparing him saying mass suicide, but there is a cult. I mean, you look at somebody that has been accused of sexually assaulting 24 women. He's been accused of paying hush money to a porn star. Now he's
he hasn't been accused. He's been convicted.
That's right.
I'm sorry. Accused. You're right. My apologies.
Defaming. Well, in the case of the rape,
Eugene Carroll,
he's been convicted, found liable of defaming her and of sexually assaulting her. So he's been found guilty in that case. Then you hear him on tape asking for 11,000 votes in Georgia, and then you hear him on the insurrection. So it's kind of like I always say, if someone says that they've been robbed by the same man at 7-Elevens all over Boston, 25 7-Elevens all over Boston, and all these different people come forward and say, "Yep, Jim Browdy, he robbed me at gunpoint at the 7-Eleven." We don't say, they're all in a conspiracy, they're all lying. They say, well, the evidence is overwhelming, and I think that's what people. If they're not looking at all these charges against this man over and over, in addition to what he did before that, which is run a fraudulent university, we have to pay $25 million, which is run a fraudulent charity, his children are barred from running charities. It is a crime family in the Trump case. So if people don't want to believe that, I think there is a cult-like thing going on. I don't know that they'll ever believe in reality, but thankfully there's not enough people in the cult, I don't think.
Shingley, thank you much for the call. Brendan, you're in Sturbridge. You're on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Welcome.
Jim and Marjorie, happy Friday, happy Trump indictment day, round 2 here.
Yep.
Just wanted to call, I'm really glad that Trump's being held accountable. No one should be above the law here in the United States, including presidents. But I'm really worried that this is going to get the nomination. It's somewhat anecdotal, but I have a brother of mine who has very different politics, and I'd kind of dipped Trump, but now is very firmly back in his camp. And as you both know, Sturbridge is a little bit more of a conservative part of the state. I got a neighbor a few houses down who had a Trump flag in his truck for quite a while. It disappeared for maybe 6 months, and now it's right back in the truck. So I'm just worried that this, particularly the procedural nature of these indictments, as much as they should happen, and I'm glad they are, it's going to add fuel to the fire for his candidacy.
Brendan,
and I'm worried about that.
Brendan, did you speak to your brother last night after the indictments were reported?
We have a ongoing testy test put it that way, for several years.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Brendan, thank you.
I feel your pain. I think a lot of families are torn by this.
You haven't spoken to your relative, have you, since
no,
last night?
There's just no point in going there anymore, because it is, like I said, it's like a cult thing. Nothing seems to stick. Andrew in Sudbury, thank you for calling.
Hey, Andrew.
Good morning. Love your show. I've called in several times.
Thanks.
This time I'm calling because I'm a criminal defense attorney and have been for 42 years. And I have a lot of clients who I represent in Superior Court who get indicted. Mm-hmm. And they get indicted. Indictments basically are delivered by members of the community, not Democrats in Democratic polls, and not people with a particular political interest. Everyday people come in and they weigh the evidence and they decide whether somebody should be prosecuted. And that particular point, then it goes to a jury, and the jury decides whether the person should be convicted or not. This is not a political show. This is not a political nothing. This is a man who's committed crimes as a president. And I hear somebody saying, well, he shouldn't be prosecuted after he's president because, after all, it's not a good thing to do, even though he can't have anything done with him except be impeached when he's president, which he wasn't because of the political parties that are going on. And now this man is going to be subjected to a prosecution. And at the end of the prosecution, if and when he's found guilty by another jury, which is actually also chosen by people from the community and not by Democrats and Democratic polls or people with a political interest, the question I'm going to have in my mind is whether the judge is going to have enough stones to put this man in jail. Like my clients would be put in jail for things like this.
Well, Andrew, let me just tell you, speaking of that, and thank you for your call, at 12:30 today, we'll be joined by former federal judge Nancy Gertner. And Nancy Gertner is pretty outspoken about a judge in Florida to whom this case was just assigned, Eileen Cannon, who was the judge who went totally in the tank for Donald Trump early in this case. And to say she was rebuked by her appellate
coast to coast
court is an understatement. And the question is she chastened, or is she going to do another good one for her, the guy who appointed her again? So stay tuned. Andrew, thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
She has a long history in the Federalist Society, too, so we'll see.
She does?
Yeah, she does. So legal experts called it a bench slap, the attacks when she was eviscerated by legal experts all across the country, people that were talking about her weird judgments in the beginnings of the Mar-a-Lago case. But anyway, we're going to keep talking about this throughout the show. Right now, though, we're going to take a pause. Well, actually, we'll ask Rick Steves about this, too. PBS travel guru Rick Steves of Rick Steves Europe, who's in town for a show Jim and I got to see last night with the Boston Pops, which was amazing. He's going to tell us about that and what else he's got going on. Rick Steves is here with us in just a second. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/
cost and to the environment. Weaponizing water, that's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Southeastern Records, presenting Weather Vanes, the new album from Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, available now wherever music is sold. And the Children's Trust, managers of Safe Kids Thrive, helping youth-serving organizations keep kids safe from sexual abuse. Prevention plans at safekidsthrive.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. We just did, during the break here, we had brilliant songwriter, singer Mary Gaucher, who's going to perform later in the show, standing, doing essentially a selfie of her with our next guest in the background. We usually talk to this guy from somewhere in Washington State. Today he's in person at the Boston Public Library, Rick Steves. Rick's an author, television and radio host, and the owner of Rick Steves Europe Tour Group. You can catch Rick Steves Europe weeknights 7:30 on GBH2. His radio show Travel with Rick Steves Sundays at 4 on GBH 89.7. He's in town, as Marjorie said, performing with the Boston Pops last night and tonight. Rick Steves Europe is Symphonic Journey. Marjorie and I went last night. It was spectacular. There may be a few single seats left, but it's pretty much sold out. And it's really wonderful coincidence that he's here, because a huge theme of last night is the quest from people all over Europe for freedom, democracy, and those kinds of things. Rick, it is thrilling to see you in the flesh. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
It's
we're
nice
very
to be
thrilled
here.
to actually see you in person. I've never met you in person before, so this is a
That's
big deal.
true.
That's never seen you before in person. So, Rick Steves, thanks for coming in. So tell people what you were doing. What was the symphonic journey about last night?
Oh, well, this is a symphony I've been giving around the country. We made a TV show about it in my own symphony in Seattle. It aired on GBH and all around the country, and it's called Rick Steves' Europe, a Symphonic Journey. And we touched down in 7 different countries in Europe, kind of feeling, first of all, we start with the Star Spangled Banner, and we feel how that gives us patriotic goosebumps, and then we remind people, we get excited about John Philip Sousa and Aaron Copland, but when we go to Norway, they get excited about Grieg, and when we go to Vienna, they get excited about Strauss, and you go to Czech Republic, and they get excited about Smetana. So my job as a tour guide is to take that ethnocentric music emotion and take it on the road and kind of broaden it out. So we traveled all around Europe, visiting countries, all with music from that one generation in the late 1800s when they were establishing their freedoms. Norway was breaking away from Sweden, Italy was forming, Germany was forming, the United States was fighting a civil war, and we analyzed it through the lens of music. And it was such a fun concert last night. It was so great to have you guys there. And I thought I was going to get a little rest time this morning, but then you guys invited me to drop by. I'm just a block away in my hotel, so I thought I'd stroll over, and it's nice to be
good. Well, you
here.
can have a nap this afternoon before your next performance,
That's good,
okay?
yeah.
Marjorie and I, most of the people we were sitting around did not know until we whispered to them about the Trump indictments. You didn't know until after the show was over. And I have to say, as it trickled out, I kept leaning over to Marjorie or Marjorie to me in between music performances, songs that you introduced and then Keith Lockhart and the Pops played, and said how perfect this was for this incredibly important moment in our history. Can you talk for a minute through the lens of what you produced last night and will produce tonight, how you see this moment with Trump in our country?
Last night we celebrated amazing stories as caring citizens of their countries worked and struggled and gave their lives for independence. There was no Italy in 1850. There was no Germany in 1850. There was no Bulgaria, no Norway. They didn't have their democracies. They didn't have their freedom. France had a divine monarch. And they finally had to get, that was the commoners against the aristocracy and so on. They fought and they earned that. We've got that here in the United States. Our revolution inspired their revolutions. And now we are flirting with losing it. And when I think about what's happening, I think where are the successful countries? Where are the societies that I really admire and think are doing well? They are societies that have trust in their institutions. And a great thing to do if you want to derail a democracy is to demolish trust in institutions. And I really think that Trump has made a political career out of targeting trust in institutions. And if he successfully gets through that, he can do what a lot of horrible autocrats have done through history and right now as we speak in different parts of Europe.
Yeah, when you think about what's happened to the trust in the Supreme Court in just this short amount of time that he's been the President of the United States. But, I want to mention how you did this last night. And this is a lot like your TV show. You have these great scenes. My favorite, I must admit, were the scenes of these castles built up at the tippy top of these, I don't know if you want to call them mountains, but they're pretty steep hills. Tell us about some of the visuals that you had last night to go with the pieces.
Marjorie, the fun last night with our symphony was to merge the beautiful music with the beautiful images from our public television series, and then I got to do what a good tour guide does. I got to give context to it.
That's right.
And my theme lately is, if you're sightseeing, trying to enjoy art or music or whatever, the more understanding, the more context you bring to it, the more you get out of it. People come to me for budget trip tips. You're going to pay the same, regardless, when you go to the Louvre or the Prado or the Rijksmuseum. But if you understand what you're looking at, you have triple the experience. So that's a budget trick right there. Know what you're looking at. And when we looked at that art last night after I got to set it up and then listen to the music from that same generation, you realize that those castles in Germany were not medieval castles. They were faux medieval, built in the Romantic age in the late 19th. The pointiest stuff in Europe is not Gothic. It's faux Gothic. And those were attempts for people who wanted to establish their legitimacy to stoke up medieval mythical roots to their country. And Mad Ludwig's castle, for example, the one we all think of as the Disney castle in Germany, that's got rebar in it. That's poured concrete. That was built the same generation as the Eiffel Tower. And for years, I thought it was medieval.
I did too.
Yeah.
I did too. I was so surprised when you said that last night. I had no idea.
By the way, for whatever it's worth, Rick won't say this, of course, because he has some humility, unlike some of us, as you know. Keith Lockhart and the Pops come onto the stage, and there's a lot of applause, as there always is, because people love them, and we love Keith, and they love Keith. This guy is introduced, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marjorie, Rick Steves introduced, it is like the Beatles reunited at Symphony Hall. It was unbelievable. And what you are, in addition to your travel thing, and you're a musician, and I know how you feel about music, one of the things we've loved about knowing you and talking to you for years is you're an historian as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came up, the first caller today to us talked about how, and I'm putting words in his mouth, but it was the gist of it, how bad it would be for this country to have a president indicted and that kind of thing. France has had that. Berlusconi in Italy. Some of the I can go down the list. Some of the countries that you've spent so much of your life, decades in, have done it, and their democracies have survived. So is there a lesson? Is there a takeaway?
There's a
from that?
huge takeaway.
What
yeah.
is it?
I mean, think of it conversely. What countries had the opportunity but didn't do it? Mussolini, Franco, Hitler all came to power legally by doing these tricks that we see happening now. Poland and Hungary, they're losing their democracies right now because they've got guys that are reading the same recipe book that the fascists 100 years ago used in Europe, and that you could say wannabe autocrats all over Western democracies today, including in our country, are looking at. You've got to demoralize the trust in the press. You've got to demoralize the trust in the judiciary. You've got to dumb down education. If there's any country in Europe that learned from its dark past when they screwed up, it's Germany.
Yeah.
And today, Germany invests hugely, not in a politicized educational system, but in just a quality educational system, because they want an electorate that can't be duped. We're investing in an electorate in the future that can be duped.
I'm so glad you mentioned Germany, because we are engaged in this effort now to kind of erase a lot of black history from the curriculum all around the country, and crazy things like Amanda Gorman's poem that she wrote at that she read at Biden's inaugural. One parent who hadn't even read it and thought it might have been Oprah Winfrey and not Amanda Gorman.
That's true.
That hadn't read the poem. But, it's off the shelves, at least for the elementary school. They moved it to the middle school. But that's going on all around the country. And the Germans, they are big on Holocaust history. They're big on saying, this is what we did. Are they not?
I've been reporting on that for 30 years as I update my guidebooks.
Yeah.
And 30 years ago, it was really tough because Uncle Helmut was still alive, and they didn't want to tell the real story of what he did. But now all those characters are gone, and Germany can talk frankly and candidly about what happened in their country. And they do a remarkable job in the concentration camps and so on. They call them docu-centers, documentation centers, of dealing with their hard history. And to see a German father with his child standing in front of one of those gas canisters in an exhibit in Dachau, explaining to his child what his grandfather did, or what his grandfather let happen in a democracy, because they thought it would be political theater to stop this guy. I just think there's powerful lessons in history. That's why a few years ago I produced this TV show on lessons of fascism in Europe. And I thought it'd be a long shot to have this be more than just a quick show on public television. But it has been one of the most powerful and successful shows I've certainly ever done in public television, because there's such an appetite for us to learn from history, and the stakes are really high right now. And like you were talking about a cult, and we're talking about demoralizing the press, and we're talking about how are we going to get through this? This is more fundamental than political. This is a societal challenge, and people from all on the spectrum, if they really believe in a strong democracy, if they really believe in a stable society in the future, they'll recognize this is not politics. This is a societal challenge for all of us.
Now, I do want to say, though, I don't think you get enough credit for the profound impact you've had all across America. The first time I talked to you, you were talking about how you were okay with recreational marijuana being legalized.
That's when I met him in person, when he was in Greater Boston with me.
We said, wow, Rick Steves is sticking his neck out. And now, if I so choose, I can run down a mile away from my house and get my little edibles legally right in Brookline, and marijuana is being legalized all across the country.
But it isn't really about marijuana with you,
I was just
right?
going to say it's more fundamental than that. I mean, of course, it's nice for people who like to smoke pot to be able to do it legally. And the fact is, in most of the country, rich white people can do it, but it's poor people and people of color that are at risk. But this is fundamentally a principled civil liberties interest. And way back then, I was just working all over the country, one state at a time, to help legalize marijuana. And now more than half of the population of this country lives in legal states. But tomorrow morning, I'm getting up really early.
I'm sure you are.
And flying to Denver because I happen to be the chair of the board of NORML now. And we've got our board meeting.
National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, for those who don't know. Yeah,
you got it. And this is an ongoing struggle to stop that prohibition. And again, it's a principled thing for us. It's a civil liberties issue. It's a racism issue. It's a respect for law enforcement issue. You know, I was just thinking about that, Jim and Marjorie. When I'm working on the drug policy stuff, I quote Mayor LaGuardia in New York, who said, if a society has a law on the books that it doesn't intend to enforce consistently across the board, the very existence of that law erodes respect for law enforcement in general.
Yes.
Now, that's in the context of drug policy reform. You can see that in the context of this whole Trump thing also. If we don't enforce our laws consistently across the board, no matter how rich this guy is, no matter how many people like him, no matter how many lawyers he's got, ignoring that problem erodes respect for law enforcement in general. Who can support that knowingly? This is really a fascinating time we're in.
Well, the encore last night was a stirring American song. What was the encore after you finished last night with Ode to Joy from Ludwig van Beethoven?
Well, as a tour guide, I always believe we want to get people out of their comfort zones. You learn more about your home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance. So we started with America the Beautiful, and then we went all over Europe celebrating how other people have their own Nathan Hales and Ethan Allens and Patrick Henrys. And then I just thought, well, you know, my favorite souvenir when I get home, it's a broader perspective and a heightened appreciation of how blessed we are to live right here in the United States. So we took it home, and the flag unfurls, and we played John Philip Sousa's march, and everybody goes crazy, and the piccolos stand up.
Yeah, we had all the stars floating around in the Symphony Hall, the big, huge flag.
I learned as a tour guide, you can take people politically out of their comfort zone, but if you remind them that you're a good capitalist, and you really appreciate the United States of America and the importance of our military to defend freedom, as long as you can acknowledge that, people can listen to you and they can open up to hard lessons that you can learn when you leave our country and talk to people who find different truths to be self-evident and God-given. And that's the beauty of travel. And that's my beautiful little niche that I found, is to be a tour guide. And I've got friends like you guys where I can share my ideas. I've got public television, public radio, and it's a cool gig.
You know, by the way, one last thing. America the Beautiful is his first song. You put up the composer's image after each, and Marjorie and I look at each other. We had no idea a woman wrote the lyrics. To Bates, to America the Beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing.
So we learned a lot last night too. So Rick, I know I speak for Marjorie. It's much better when you're here in person. So if you can just fly cross country, maybe in 2 weeks.
You know, I'm 3 hours.
Stuff.
I'm 3 hours earlier than you guys, and ever since the beginning of COVID, we've had a monthly conversation.
Yes, we have.
That's right.
And it's my excuse once a month to get up early so I can talk to you guys on a Zoom
Rick,
call.
I can't tell you how much we enjoyed last night and how thrilled we are to see you in person here.
Thanks
you so much. It's great to see the great Rick Steves.
Thank you. And you know, I could mention, if anybody wants to watch the original of that show, they can watch it for free anytime if they go to ricksteves.com into the TV corner and look for the TV special along with the fascism show and everything else I've ever done called The Symphonic Journey. But people can watch the original of that if they like.
Great.
And there may be a few singles tickets. You can check that out too.
Yeah,
it's
it was
unlikely. It was sold out
packed last night.
Rick Steves, thanks. Safe trip home. Great to see you.
Thank you very much for being here. We very
Wonderful
much appreciate it.
Happy travels.
Rick Steves, you know him well. He's an author, TV and radio host, the owner of Rick Steves Europe Tour Group with the best tour guide books I've ever seen. You can catch Rick Steves Europe weeknights 7:30 on GBH2 and his radio show, Travel with Rick Steves, Sundays at 4 o'clock on GBH 89.7.
Marjorie.
That's right. I'm getting a hug. I'm getting a hug. Glad to
outro.
get one.
Take care.
He's in town performing with the Boston Pops, Rick Steves Europe, a symphonic journey. There's one more show tonight. Handful of tickets left at bso.org/pops. Okay, coming up. After a 3-year hiatus, Boston is once again hosting a Pride Parade and Festival. 2 of its organizers are here to tell us all about it. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
I see a police car rapidly approaching.
This week on Stories from the Stage.
He motions for my grandma to roll the window down. She's deaf, and we use sign language to communicate. I'm gonna have to ask you both to keep your dome light off for the remainder of your trip. Basically, this man is asking me and my grandma to not talk until we get home.
Stories from the Stage, Sunday night at 7, only on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business by offering cybersecurity, internet, and mobile solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. Comcast Business, internet required. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing the latest therapies and cancer specialists who are experienced in your cancer. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browder. She's Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. I'm going to do this introduction, Marjorie, as I hold my Pride
That's
bagel
right.
from the Newsfeed Cafe.
I apologize.
Yes, you did. Tomorrow at 11, Boston will kick off the first Pride Parade since 2019, in large part thanks to our next two guests. The parade is scheduled to start right where we're standing, Copley Square. It'll then make its way to Boston Common. There are also two festivals, both starting at noon. More information at bostonprideforthepeople.org. Here with us at the BPL, we're joined by Adriana Bolin, president of Boston Pride for the People, the group behind the Pride Parade, and Chastity Bowick is here as well. She's a member of the Boston Pride for the People Organizing Committee. Previously, she co-founded Trans Resistance Mass and led the Transgender Emergency Fund. These days, she heads Chastity's consulting and talent group, providing services and resources for trans and gender nonconforming people, as well as ally and sensitivity training. Welcome to you both, and congratulations. We're really happy to see you.
Yeah, well, Adriana, let's start with the good news that the Pride Parade is back.
It's back.
And so how did this not be here, and how did it get back?
I would say, so how it got back was a bunch of us in the community realizing that we had to be the ones to create something for our city where we all could feel included and respected and accepted.
And
how hard was it to put the pieces back together, though?
It was so hard.
Well, tell us
it was
a little
so hard.
bit about
It was
that.
so hard, and I didn't really know what I was signing up for. I'm such a passionate person. And so I was so excited, like, let's get together, let's create what we see in our mind and what we're engaging the community about. That involved us meeting weekly starting from September 2022, meeting with different communities. There's just so much that we did to try and understand what building this would be like, and we hadn't done it before together.
You know, Chastity, from our reading and talking to people who are involved in this, issues of respect for people of color in positions of power in the organization, trans people in particular, were among the reasons why this collapsed a couple of years ago. How are we doing in this limited space? Because we know the big picture. We'll talk about that in a minute. How are we doing in this limited space, Pride for the People, in 2023?
Pride for the People, they are setting the precedence of how to be inclusive of everyone under the umbrella. So making sure that marginalized voices like trans women of color, who are the most marginalized under the umbrella, have a voice in what they want Pride to look like. You know, we lose a lot of lives in our community over the years, so Pride can be bittersweet to us, and we want to have a say-so.
What is it going to look like tomorrow? I mean, both the parade itself and these other companion festival things that are happening, Adriana.
Well, there's 4 principles that I want to mention that really are the foundation of everything that we do. And then I'm going to talk about all the details.
Okay.
So the 4 principles, the first is commemoration. And that's because Pride started as a protest. And we want to honor the lives lost, the lives risked for a lot of the freedoms that our community can experience today. The second is educate. Our community experiences a lot of freedoms because of the folks that we're commemorating, and there's so much that we have addressed today, gender affirming care, just trying to be our own selves in our lives. And so we need to educate the community that these things are happening. Not everyone knows, and so you can't change it unless everyone knows what's happening and their role in the context of that work. The third is empower. Our communities can't make change unless they're empowered. They're given the resources, they're looked to and respected and appreciated. And the fourth is celebration, because we are worthy of celebration and joy as LGBTQ plus communities. And what that will look like tomorrow, starting here, is a parade that looks like the communities we're looking to support and center. We'll have our youth, we'll have all different organizations, businesses, folks coming together to really honor and celebrate a time where we need to really hold ourselves together in this world. And we'll also have the 2 festivals that you mentioned earlier. And I'm excited because there's something for all ages. There's our all-age area in the Boston Common, which has an LGBTQ plus and a BIPOC marketplace. It has an aging and older adult area, an area for families. For youth, we have a quiet area. There's so many different things going on. And then at Boston, at City Hall Plaza is our 21 plus area. We'll have a beer garden, a DJ, entertainment, vendors there as well. So our hope is that folks can tap into something tomorrow. And if not, there's so many things going on throughout our city tomorrow. So we just hope that folks can tap into things that are activated.
You know, either of you can talk about this, but I'll ask you, Chastity, starting first. You know, I think a lot of people thought, you know, okay, gay marriage, Supreme Court says it's okay. You have a lot of trans people out on TV, magazine covers. People were getting understanding what the trans world was about. People that didn't understand it. It seemed like we were moving in this direction. And all of a sudden there was like a going backwards. And I don't know if it's just politicians or, I mean, what happened, I guess, is I mean, when you have people outside Children's Hospital complaining about trans care for children and in these weird, scary outfits, what happened?
In my opinion, I would say in 2016, it took a turn for the worse. This is when people had someone who was saying it was okay to attack us verbally, physically, emotionally, and that has elevated over the years. And so that's why you, like you said, outside of Boston Children's Hospital, people feel they have a right and that our lives don't matter, that we don't have a choice. In the last Republican convention, they were talking about genocide within the trans community, right? So we have a lot of work to do. So not only are we combating these politicians, we have to combat the people who believe in this ideology that they're putting out there. And so we have so much work to do. And so Pride is 1 month, but we have to do this work all year round.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way we're going to combat these issues.
That's the voice of Chastity Bowick. She's here with Adriana Bolin. They're both behind Boston Pride for the People, and tomorrow is the parade and all this sort of stuff. You know, staying on that, Adriana, for a minute, you know the Human Rights Campaign has declared an LGBTQ state of emergency because of what Marjorie and Chastity were talking about. When you were going down the 4 elements a minute ago, I don't even know if you're conscious of this, you were straight-faced when you did the first 3, and when you mentioned the celebration, you had a broad smile on your face. How do you juxtapose the beauty of a celebration that hasn't been had in years finally coming back with the backdrop of all the crap that Chastity and Marjorie were talking about? You know what I mean? Sort of have 2 eyes on 2, you know what I mean?
I have the same question for myself. And it's being in a position, myself and our community, where we can actually make change and realize that that change comes with a lot of feelings, comes with it a lot of different experiences. And in those experiences, we still have to be happy. So how we do it, we do it. And I'm grateful that we have that energy. It's not easy. It's not easy to be a community that is experiencing and oppressed in all these different ways, dependent on our intersectional identities, and still trying to express joy. So it's a superpower that our community has.
Well, also, it seems to be the right community, at least from my perspective. I mean, I know that under Mayor Wu, there's this city office for LGBTQ plus advancement. I know you worked in the housing area for trans people, Chastity, and there is some housing provided for some seniors in the LGBTQ community. Is this a community, is this a city that's doing what it needs to do to advance this cause, Adriana?
It's doing what it needs to do and needs to continue doing more of what needs to be done.
You're nodding in agreement, Chastity. Say what you're thinking.
It's a start. It's a start. But, you know, like we're going back to these politicians, when they're running, it's a lot of lip service. So now that, you know, we have 2 powerful women in office, I'm going to be holding them accountable to make sure that they provide more resources.
What's the most important thing you want? We're going to have Mayor Wu here on Tuesday? What, the 20th? My apologies. And Governor Healy will probably be here the next couple of a week or so too. What do you most immediately need from both of these recently elected leaders?
Housing.
Housing.
Housing is a major component of health and wellness with the LGBTQIA+
And
community.
particularly a problem in the trans community, is
Absolutely.
it not? Well, explain some of that. I mean, you had a homelessness thing yourself, did you not? Not
Exactly.
so long ago?
Exactly. If it wasn't for the Trans Emergency Fund, I probably wouldn't be here with you all today. And so we need more programs and more resources being put into that infrastructure because we are still, unfortunately, being discriminated against in cisgender shelters. So we need that space for ourselves. And the Trans Emergency Fund Transitional Home, it can only house up to 8 people. So we need to quadruple that so we can get some of these trans folks off of the street and but they won't stop being attacked. It was just a trans woman attacked a few weeks ago in Boston Commons, but you don't see that on the news.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure we have the right funding for these resources.
Well, you also mentioned, Chastity, the trans issue and the race issue. I mean, obviously racism is involved in this whole thing too, so it is kind of a double whammy that people are having to deal with. What did the fund do for you?
It got me off the streets where, stopped me from having to engage in survival sex work. And it got me a room that I paid the rent for 3 months. And so it literally saved my life. And in return, that's why I got involved, because I wanted to give back to my community.
By the way, people are texting or posting on YouTube, love Jim's pride shirt. It's from WGBH. Where do we get the shirt? You don't, unfortunately. I don't think are they available to, we'll see if they can be, but they're not now. By the way, one factual update. Unrelated here, one of the lawyers who was on CNN last night defending Trump is among 2 lawyers who resigned from Trump's team this morning, saying they will no longer be representing the former president of the United States. No more negative talk for the remaining 5 minutes, Adriana. Give us a little bit more of a feel of tomorrow, if you can. Just fill in a few more blanks for us.
Yeah, so tomorrow, as I mentioned, we'll be here. We'll be doing a ribbon cutting. There will be a lot of different people with us as we get ready to start our parade. We have over 200 contingents joining us in our parade, each with about 75 folks. We'll be kicking off and going towards the Common. Once we get at the Common, everyone will be able to break out in their different activities. We have several performers at both of our stages. We have ASL interpreters, both deaf and hearing interpreters available, and we're just excited to engage folks.
What are you doing about, I realized after I said no more negative, this isn't quite negative. Let's consider this just a question. What's happening with corporate support? I mean, there's been a lot of crap in the past that a lot of people, what is it called, rainbow washing, essentially, that a lot of corporations
Target.
who are not doing the right
Used to be
things.
my favorite store.
And the way they try to cover for their misdeeds is we'll give $2,000 to a parade. You have a different sort of vetting standard this round, do you not?
We do. We came up with a criteria, so I just shared with you the 4 principles that our mission and work is founded on. And we want to make sure that any business or organization or corporation that we engage with align with those principles. And we did that by developing a criteria where we're looking at their HRC index number and seeing if they've donated to any anti-LGBTQ or anti-abortion legislation. So we have an active criteria that we put all corporations through. And we have a conversation. If in fact we do see they have a score that is higher or suggests that they've donated somewhere, we have a conversation and share with them how they can be genuine allies. We have had conversations.
Could you describe one of those to us? What's that like?
I like having honest conversations with people, and I find when you approach people in a way to educate and not shame, that it's a positive conversation. So you're laughing.
No, I love that. I want to be like you when I grow up, by the way.
It takes patience. It's not always easy to do that.
Okay.
So I'm sure. But what we aim for is to have honest conversations where we're educating. Then people feel more called in than called out, and so they've been respectful conversations.
And has it worked in your estimation? Meaning, have you seen movement, receptivity, understanding that maybe they can't behave that kind of way?
Yeah, which is nice. It's like, wow, thought it wouldn't click, but it clicked in our conversation. When we've had the privilege to actually be one-on-one with people and have conversations with them. Our community at large doesn't always have that privilege and access.
It's terrific.
Yeah, like I said before, when you see stores like Target that have that have sold Pride material for years without controversy. I was asking you about this before. It's like, okay, you go and there's the stuff where you have in your kids' schools, as I've had in my kids' schools, talks about gay rights and kids with gay moms and transgender families and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like this, it seems like dark ages almost. You know what I mean?
It feels like we've gone backwards.
Yeah.
Can I just say that I've reached out to Target multiple times to ask for donations for the Transgender Emergency Fund, and I've never gotten a response. So
really,
yeah. Sad.
Well, I guess now you know why. I mean, not a lot of courage in those parts. Maybe you can have a one-on-one conversation with them, Adriana.
Yeah.
How about that?
We would.
Yeah.
We are the ones.
Are you two as excited as you appear to be, I should say? I mean, just looking at you when you've been talking about tomorrow, the expressions explode. I mean, Adriana, you're really...
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I feel like I've talked about my experience with our committee, like being at camp. I feel like in September we sat down with our crayons and markers, like, okay, y'all, this is what it's going to look like. And we're going to get to see that in person. And, wow, it's hitting me in a little emotional way. But
That's great.
we get to see that in person. And I'm like, I'm excited. It's like building something with such a diverse and intersectional group. It's like, y'all, it's possible. We can be different and come together and create something beautiful.
Chester, you feeling the same deal?
Absolutely. And the fact that we have this amazing, beautiful black woman as the president of Boston.
That'd be
Pride for the
Adriana
People.
we're talking about
Yes.
right here. Yes.
Because there's two of us up here.
And of course, an amazing board that all assists. Like, I'm excited to see what has all been executed, and we're going to come party. I hope you two are going to come
Well,
party
let me
with
tell
us.
you, yeah, the answer is yes, and this
Yes.
is really contagious. We're thrilled to see you both, and congratulations on some wonderful work. Have fun tomorrow.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very, very much for being here. I hope you have a
Great
great
to see
day
you both.
tomorrow.
Thank
We're
you.
speaking with Adriana Boland. She's president of Boston Pride for the People, as well as Chastity Bowick. She's a member of the group's organizing committee, as well as the woman behind Chastity's consulting and talent group. Boston Pride Parade's tomorrow. It starts at 11 right here in Copley and ends at Boston Common. What's the matter?
Just watching Adriana.
Oh,
This
okay.
is one happy woman.
Two festivals you don't want to miss. One for the whole family.
I'm the one who's excited. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, every single one of us could use a mercy now. Every single one of us could use some mercy now. They were great. Committees and yeah, the umbrella's big. We have a hard time all figuring out how to stand next to each other in this.
Well, the woman who's on next with us, who's a good friend of ours, is the regular of the week, is the publisher of Bay Windows, which is the largest.
I remember Jim. Oh yeah, I was friends with Jim when he started it, way back in the day.
Sue O'Connell's with us, so you can't wait to hear it. So I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, we're good. It's so nice to be in Boston. Okay. Yeah, every single one of us could use some mercy now. That's all right. I can wait here if you want me to. Okay. We got about 40 minutes? Yeah, you gotta get some time. Okay.
23, NASDAQ is up 10. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. After a 3-year hiatus, Boston's Pride Parade will take to the streets of the city once again tomorrow. The group Boston Pride for the People can be credited with pulling the events together not just for tomorrow, but for most of Pride Month as well. Tomorrow's parade begins at 11 a.m. on Boylston Street. It'll wind its way to the Boston Common, and then not long after, the Pride Festival will kick off on the Common and at Boston City Hall Plaza. According to the organizers, some 250 groups, organizations, and businesses will march in the parade. And Boston Mayor Michelle Wu's office says they're expecting 1 million people or more to come out to the all-ages events. The owners of Dave & Buster's will pay $275,000 to resolve allegations of meal break and child labor violations at its various locations. According to the Attorney General's office, Andrea Campbell, the settlement with Dave & Buster's in Braintree, Natick, and Woburn also includes compensation for more than 800 employees. Under the terms of the agreement, Dave & Buster's of Massachusetts, Inc. will accept 3 citations issued by the AG's office. They include citations for violating state law by not providing meal breaks of at least 30 minutes to employees who work shifts lasting longer than 6 hours, and not obtaining work permits for minors before they began employment, and also by employing 16 or 17-year-old minors for later hours than permitted by law. 63 degrees outside our studios. We are expecting some rain.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Friday. I am Marjorie Yeagan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Before we introduce the local woman who's also a coyote attack survivor, I just want to read, we mentioned to you in the middle of our discussion with the Pride for the People that 2 of Donald Trump's lawyers have resigned this morning, one of whom was on TV just last night defending him. Here's a statement, a post by Donald Trump. For purposes of fighting the greatest, this is just a few minutes ago, greatest witch hunt of all time, now moving to the Florida courts, I'll be represented by Todd Blanche, and listen to this, and a firm to be named later. I mean,
yeah.
Is this even real? I mean, in any case, we're going to talk more about this, not only with Sue, but with Nance Gertner, former federal judge, at 12:30. And then after we have an incredible performance just before 1 o'clock, we're going to spend the remainder of the last hour just talking to you about these historic developments. But first, that local woman and coyote attack survivor is joining us. She'd be a media maven as well. That's Sue O'Connell. Sue is the co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, political analyst for NECN and NBC 10 Boston. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day, good day. I'm headed down to Miami for the indictment, so I'm very excited.
Are you really? Oh, good.
No, you're not.
I am.
Tuesday at the courthouse in Miami, right?
Yep.
That's
no,
good.
Wait a second. You're
I
going?
am.
You are?
Yep, with the whole team. We're all going down. We're leaving Sunday night or Monday morning. We'll be down there reporting live from Miami. So
well, you have to call us on Tuesday. You really have to work it out with Jamie or whomever. You got to call us on Tuesday.
Jim doesn't understand that real reporters actually go to real events and report on them as they're happening.
They do?
Right in front of them.
Like
yeah.
in person?
That's right. Yeah, it's a new concept. But anyway, Sue O'Connell, we're going to play a little sound from something that sounds really cool.
Oh my God, it's
this
great.
Speak Now interview for NBC. This is part of you talking, reflecting on coming out as a gay woman in America. Here it is.
I've been fortunate because I came out, I think, in 1983, and my family was accepting, and I also was able to work in a place that allowed me to be openly gay. But at the same time, there were opportunities that I did not get and did not get to take advantage of because I was openly gay. It definitely is still a major challenge for people to come out, which is why the community is so important, that we are often a community of a chosen family, friends and colleagues who support each other and hope to fill in the gaps where sometimes family is unable to do so.
So Sue O'Connell, before I ask you a little bit about what you said in that little piece, tell us what this is part of.
Yeah, so NBC Universal, and especially here at NBC 10 Boston, Telemundo New England, NECN, and Boston NBC Sports, we have Speak Now, which is how we are celebrating Pride Month across our many companies. And here in Boston, our group did an exceptional job. I wasn't involved in it. I was just a talent in this part, but Mission and the team really asked folks to come out and tell their stories and produce them in these great black and white videos, and also allies to share about how they support us and why Pride is important. So a number of my colleagues got to share their stories about being LGBTQ. You might note I forgot to say I was a lesbian at the beginning of it. I said I was a mother and then moved right on. So I'd like to set the record straight. I am indeed a lesbian. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Sorry. But it's been really incredible. It's had a great impact on our coworkers. I mean, we hang out all the time, we talk all the time, but really sharing our stories and why Pride Month is so important to us has really been really meaningful. I have to say, it was more moving than I think any of us expected it to be.
Can I tell you, I don't work there, and I went online to watch you this morning, and then I ended up watching like six or seven more. Some of the people you know from television, some behind the scenes, including the one reporter who didn't come out till later in life. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
Abby Zagota.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yep.
I mean, these are so moving and so beautiful. How do people find them, by the way, if they want to check them out? Where do they go?
They can go to our website at any of our websites at NECN or NBC 10 Boston. Just Google Speak Now, and Colton Bradford there's Tevin's there, the whole crew of folks. I think we might have possibly the most diverse on-air staff in the market in the history of Boston. So I just hope you get to know us a little bit better.
You know, one other thing about what you had to say. Did you not say, bless you, Marjorie, did you not say in the middle of this thing that you lived in New York City for 90 days? Is that what you said? What was that about?
So I left Kiss 108, where I was the music director. I think I was 25 years old, and I moved to New York to work for Atlantic Records. And surprisingly, Jim, I think you know this, New York is not like Boston. And I saw my boss standing in line to get in a club, and I thought, oh, forget this. I'm going back to Boston where I never have to stand in line.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned that you were in jobs like Kiss 108, where things might have been like, everybody was kind of loose and relaxed, and it wasn't like corporate America or something like that, or a white shoe law firm. But you also mentioned in that little clip we played that there were opportunities you think you did not get and didn't get to take advantage of. Like what?
Well, at that time, I had also applied for a job at another major record label, and I got all the way to the final interview, and someone who used to work there, who I worked with at Kiss 108, came up and said they want to hire you, but they want you to tone down the gay. And this is like 1985, and I was just like, well, what does that even mean, tone down the gay? It wasn't like it is today. You weren't really open all the time about who you were. And so I didn't take that job, and at that moment, I made a decision that I was just going to work places where I could be who I was authentically, and that automatically limits where you're going to go work, right? So to your point, there's a lot of corporate communication jobs that I could have applied for that I didn't. I mean, obviously, I'm happy where I am, and things worked out perfectly, but I'm definitely sure I could have been making a lot more money than I'm making now. And there are some other things that I could be doing that those opportunities were not open to me because I think I just physically was unable to be closeted. It wasn't so much a brave choice on my part, but I definitely did miss out on opportunities because I was openly gay in the 80s and 90s.
Sue, we want to get your thoughts on Trump, but one more related thing before we do. We mentioned to the leaders of Pride for the People a couple of minutes ago that the Human Rights Campaign has declared an LGBTQ plus state of emergency. And on the other side of the equation, the current president, Joe Biden, has been attempting through executive order to do some things to advance the cause. And obviously people have learned, if they didn't know before, there's only so much a president can do unilaterally as opposed to getting things through Congress and then signing on. Has he done things that will make a difference? And if he has, what are they?
Yeah, he has. I mean, unfortunately, though, Jim, it's less about advancing the cause and more about protecting us from an onslaught of negativity, both physically and emotionally. Some of the things that he did, and he will celebrate on Saturday. They had to move the LGBTQ event at the White House due to the air quality.
Oh, right, I read that, yeah.
And that's going to be on Saturday instead of yesterday. He authorized Homeland Security in helping train LGBTQ bars and restaurants and retail establishments on how to react to bomb threats. That's one of the things that the president has done. The president is also working at examining these book bans and trying to stop those. That's one thing that the president has done. And getting more money from the government to help with mental health services, especially for young LGBTQ people. So while these things are important, they're not advancing our cause. They are a firewall up against the attack that we are under right now. So I'm sure that Joe Biden could be doing more, but at this point, he's got to defend us from the attacks that are happening across the country at us.
By the way, I think the first openly gay press secretary is Joe Biden's secretary, is she not?
Yes.
Yeah, she's
yes,
press
she
secretary
is.
there. So Jim mentioned we were just talking to people from Boston Pride, Andrea Boland and Chastity Bowick, and I asked Chastity about we seem for a while to be going in this trajectory where people saying, okay, I got a gay brother, gay neighbor, gay whatever, and I'm on board, gay marriage, whatever, fine. And then we seem to take this turn, and now we're in this horrible place where you've got hundreds of bills across the country aimed at gay and trans people. And I asked her what she thought was the turning point, and she said 2016, which of course is when Donald Trump was elected. Do you think that's what happened, or is it something else, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Marjorie. It definitely allowed, I think Donald Trump allowed people to act in a way because he acted in a way that some people might be thinking, or it was socially unacceptable or just plain rude and wrong to do. Yeah. And he just did it, and it allowed people to behave that way. I don't know why things changed. That definitely is associated to that. I don't know if that's exactly why things change. We were just joking around this morning with some straight colleagues saying, straight people act like gay people raise gay kids. People all raised by straight people, right? I mean, I was not exposed to drag shows when I was a kid, and look, I turned out to be a lesbian, and you never really know who your kid is going to turn out to be. You just don't know what your adult child is going to be, and that makes me really sad for a lot of these parents who are working so hard to make it more difficult for trans kids to get care that they need and LGBTQ kids to feel safe in school, because you just don't know who your kid is going to turn out to be. And If evidence and history teaches us anything, about 99% of gay LGBTQ people were born and raised by straight people. So I can only hope that's going to turn the corner.
Why are you
So
laughing?
I'm laughing because I remember a line from Christopher Muther's story. We had Christopher Muther on. He's a travel writer for the Globe, and he was talking about this whole thing about allegations about grooming children to be gay, and there was a quote in there from some gay guy who says, I don't know about you, but I was groomed to be a heterosexual by two straight parents, and obviously it didn't work. Going to your point, that the idea that you're going to be whatever you're going to be because you've got parents that are grooming you is
right.
Children often don't listen to their parents. That's been my experience,
Or
Sue. I don't know about
listen.
yours.
No, mine is my bougie daughter who likes to spend as much money as she can on the finest restaurants has nothing to do with me. So.
Exactly.
Sue, you probably heard that for the first time in American history, a president or former president is facing federal criminal charges. It's only because Trump is Trump that there's not even more of a reaction than there is and should be. You have to step back for a second and say, okay, it's sort of the norm and a natural progression for somebody who's got this kind of history, but it's never been close to this for any of the presidents in our nation's history. What was your immediate reaction when you heard this, I assume, last night?
Yeah, I was actually out to dinner with Ruby, with my daughter in the North End, and we were out, our other pet, Inca, passed away last week, who was 18.
I know.
And we were out celebrating Inca's life at dinner, and I shut my phones off, and I got outside the restaurant and turned them both on, and they blew up like crazy. And I said to Ruby, to your point, I bet you Trump got indicted. And hasn't he already been indicted? I'm like, well, there's going to be more coming, too. I mean, it's hard, Jim. You sort of sum it up exactly. It's like we expected this to happen this week. All the news stations were on alert that something was going to happen. And you're kind of beyond being shocked. At the same time, you have to be shocked because this is so abnormal. And it's really both a good day for America because the justice system is working, and a sad day for America because we elected Donald Trump, and this is what we got. He's not going to change. And his supporters, at least 25% of them, are still going to support him. People keep asking me, is this it? Is this when things will change? I mean, what more does he have to be accused of, credibly accused of, and indicted for, and charged with fraud and convicted of fraud for people to think, well, no, maybe he's not the kind of character, the kind of moral character that we want to be president of the United States. So it's just mind-blowing.
I don't know where you got that 25% figure. I figure it's going to be, I worry it's going to be 100% of those who support him, who stick with him, maybe more, just like what happened after his indictments in Manhattan County. I have to say, that's what scares me more than what Trump will be Trump, whatever that is. It's not good for democracy and the future of our country. But the notion that that Kevin McCarthy in his office didn't say, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. Today's the day. I got to do the right thing and say, at minimum, let the justice system play out, as opposed to talking about the weaponization or whatever. Maybe that was DeSantis who said that too.
They're both saying it.
I am really troubled about how this may not only cause his supporters to stick, but may invigorate other people who are angry at big government, like bullies. I don't even know what it is. Are you worried, or am I in a...
Yeah, no, I mean, my 25% number is actually of the 30% of Republicans who support him. So 100%
I'm sorry. I got it. Okay, okay.
So it'd be 100% of his supporters, and I imagine that just a couple will drop, but he'll still have a number that will get him through the primary. And I think the anti-government people, I don't know, it may... we saw what happened on January 6th, so I don't want to discount what could happen, but we also saw how many of those people who participated in January 6th are now behind bars, and some serving really, really, really lengthy sentences while Donald Trump still roams the planet. So I hope that for those who were kind of on the bubble and went and their wives yelled at them or their husbands yelled at them and now they're in jail, that might serve as a message to others that, this isn't a movie, this is real life. But what I do worry about is how the Republicans, I think it's important for us to have a multi-party democracy where people can present ideas.
Me too.
There's certainly things that regular Republicans put forward that I would consider supporting, but at this moment you can't. And where are the Democrats? Joe Biden can say, well, gee, I wish I could do these things. I wish I could make sure that I could forgive your college loan. I wish I could, guarantee that climate crisis will be addressed, but we're getting there. We'll keep working on it while he can compromise. But what do the Republicans say, right? They say, well, we're for law and order, except in this case where we think the Justice Department is corrupt, right? You can't really square, that's not an ideology that you can marry off to each other. So the Republicans are continuing to just shoot themselves in the foot. And I never really think there's going to be an opportunity for a third party to emerge, but they really got to get their act together if they want to govern. They have done no governing for the most part since they have taken control of the House. They've done no policy, presented no real bills. So it's just like a bad reality TV show.
We call you media maven primarily because you are. There's one more trickle-down effect at minimum of Donald Trump is the celebrated CEO or whatever he was of CNN, Chris, we hardly knew ye. It lasted about a year. There was this story. By the way, I know it's 15,000 words long. If people want to have a real fun read, and I use the term fun advisedly, read the piece in The Atlantic where this egomaniacal fool agreed to have a reporter essentially move in with him for months and months, and the guy rips Chris Licht to shreds in ways that are unimaginable. And I think the conventional wisdom is the final straw was essentially not so much even the Trump town hall, even though he took a lot of criticism, but the Trump town hall audience, which apparently was picked by CNN and was essentially participants in a Trump rally. So what do you make of this CNN thing? What's the fallout going to be? What does it mean for coverage of Trump going forward? All that sort of stuff.
So the most horrific part of that article to me was sort of in the opening paragraph. I don't have it in front of me, but I think Chris Licht was asked about thinking about Donald Trump and how they covered Donald Trump. And he said that he doesn't spend a lot of nights wondering how they should be covering Donald Trump, and that he thought, basically, I'm paraphrasing, that the media had learned their lesson from the 2016 campaign. And he could not have been more wrong about that. Every legitimate, serious journalist I know spends a lot of time talking about how do we cover Donald Trump during this election season? How do we cover Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? How do we cover candidates who are spreading disinformation, are saying things that aren't true, but yet still have to cover them because they're newsworthy and they are in fact legitimate candidates who are running for president? We talk about it all the time. So the fact that Chris Licht admitted that he doesn't think about it at all was horrifying to me, and that's clearly what happened with the town hall meeting, that it was not like what we do will have an impact. How do we do it fairly? How do we do it professionally? Didn't seem to be at all part of his DNA and how he would run CNN. And, a lot of folks are portraying this as CNN tried to go to the middle in their coverage, right? They wanted to not be a little liberal. They wanted to be in the middle, and they might have overcorrected. But I think he was just a bad choice to be a news director of such a complicated network, that if you could certainly offer more news coverage without pundits like me, you could, and CNN certainly has the bandwidth to do that, and they certainly could have done a town meeting with Donald Trump that could have in some way been more fact-based or correcting it in real time or airing it later, but they chose not to. So I'm hoping there are fewer Chris Lichts out there who will look at the CNN debacle as a cautionary tale, that we do have to think about how we're covering these people. We have to have meetings about it. We have to make plans, and we have to correct ourselves when we do something wrong, and understand that everything that we do has an impact. And I'm praying for CNN because it's an important tool in the media landscape. I'm not sure what they're going to do, though. A couple of final things about CNN that bear mentioning. If you read a lot of the stories in New York Magazine, of the Atlantic piece, Brian Stelter, who was the former media critic there, who was fired by
I wish
Chris
they'd rehire
Licht,
him.
who was recently on with us talking about this. Virtually none of the on-air leaders or high-profile people would on camera or with a name attached criticize the direction their station took. So it's worth doing a shout out to Christiana Amanpour, who I think in her graduation address was the Columbia School of Journalism, took him on. And, I mean, she's a powerful woman. She's a huge presence. Oliver Darcy, who replaced Brian Stelter as the editor of this fabulous morning newsletter, which if you don't get, you should. It's free. Reliable Sources. That morning after the town hall had the courage to take on his boss and say, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't think any useful purpose was served by last night. He was called in by Licht, a fairly low-level person. I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but he's not Anderson Cooper. And he was accused of being too emotional by Chris Licht, probably putting his livelihood at risk. But that's the kind of courage, in my opinion, you want to see in journalists who are willing to call things as they see them. So Amanpour and Darcy deserve a huge amount of praise for those who care about truth in journalism.
Now, Media Maven Sue O'Connell, before you leave, I want to know, we have a text here I want you to know from Patty in Winthrop, who says, I just want to say that as a former resident and graduate of the high school in Revere, that I think Sue O'Connell is a credit to Revere and to the schools in Revere, and I'm proud to be from the same city, Revere.
What do you say to her or him?
Go Revere, class of 1980. There you go,
She thinks it's the same part of Revere, the Ave, as in short for Avenue?
Yeah, I'm from Shirley Ave.
There you go. Well, Patty in Winthrop, she's very proud to be associated with you, Sue O'Connell. There you go.
A lot of people, they move up in the world. In Revere, we moved to Winthrop. I lived in Winthrop for 2 years, too. That's my brother lives in Winthrop. I got lots of family and friends in Winthrop. Thank you, Patty. Happy Pride.
I think Patty's mother was a bookie, too. That may be what it was all about. Hey,
Sue
Sue,
O'Connell, thank you.
Happy Pride to you.
Watch out.
By the way,
Coyotes.
congratulations to your colleagues. Those videos are brilliant and moving and important. Well done.
I'll let them know. Hey, we're broadcasting the Pride Parade tomorrow.
What time?
NBC 10 Boston.
What time are you on?
Whatever time it starts. I don't know. And then we're showing it again.
Okay, good, fine. Call in Tuesday, because real reporters go to the scene, Marjorie tells me.
That's right, they do.
Whatever that means.
We've been speaking with local woman Sue O'Connell, who survived a coyote attack with her wonderful dog, Maud. She's also co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, political analyst for NECN and NBC 10 Boston, and our media maven right here at Boston Public Radio. After a quick break.
Oh, by the way, she is going to join. It's already established. My apologies. She's going to join us on Tuesday. Can I say one last thing?
Yes.
A lot of people are texting saying, well, we have another opportunity to call in about Trump.
Yes.
After we have this brilliant performance in maybe about 30 minutes, we're going to take calls for the rest of the show.
Yes, we are. But up next, we're going to talk to retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, who's going to take a lot of our questions, the legal questions about what the former president is facing and the impact of this judge in Miami. As former President Trump, of course, becomes the first former president in the history of the United States to face federal criminal charges. You are listening to Boston Public Radio.
It's generational.
Their families have never swam. They have a fear of the water.
How one nonprofit organization is changing that with free swimming lessons taught by...
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Polar Seltzer, family made in the heart of New England since 1882. Cheers to being 8 years older than radio. Learn more at Polar Seltzer.
Related to his handling of these classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. As you all know, it's the first ever for a president on federal charges in the history of our country. There are a ton of legal questions. And a BPR contributor, Judge Gertner, thanks for making time. We appreciate it.
Okay, I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, so Judge Gertner, I'll ask you the classic reporter's question. What's your reaction?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
To the news of this indictment.
You know, again, if it had not happened, it would do violence to the whole regime for the protection of classified and confidential documents. In other words, you can't have what Trump did, essentially thumbing his nose at the entire system, if the reporting is right and it sounds right, and to go without consequences. So I think that this is the indictment that had to happen, and then the question is where we go from here.
Well, speaking of going from here, you have to explain to me why the special counsel made the decision to to choose Florida as a jurisdiction and not D.C. The two things that one appears to be true and one is true. The thing that appears to be true is a typical jury in Washington, D.C., again, I want fairness, but this is a fact, is more Democratic leaning. A typical jury in Palm Beach or in that part of Florida is more Republican leaning. That's one. But much more importantly, a judge whom you eviscerated on this show, Eileen Cannon, and a judge who was eviscerated by her appellate colleagues for essentially going in the tank for Donald Trump on this very issue several months ago. Eileen Cannon has at least preliminarily been assigned this case. Marjorie's wondering if she'll be chastened. I guess we'll get to that. So what's your reaction on both fronts, or any fronts, to the decision to proceed in Florida?
Okay, so what Jack Smith did was take a significant legal issue off the table by bringing this in Florida. And the reason is the Constitution, this is not a statute, this is a constitutional requirement that you be tried in the venue, and you would be tried, the way the Constitution describes it, is vicinage, where you're tried where the act took place. Now, there were a bunch of acts here. One could have been the act of taking these documents when you didn't have a right to in Washington, willfully taking them in Washington. And then there is willful retention, which is in Florida. Smith must have made the calculation that the willful retention case is much stronger, and that therefore he had to bring that in Florida. There was a theory that could have brought it in Washington, but that would have wrapped this very important case up in all sorts of motions with respect to the venue, and he didn't want to do that.
So
I think on this show I predicted that could well happen because the retention stuff is very strong. The taking is a different issue.
How about Judge Cannon?
Well, I don't think I've been scrambling to the extent I had time this morning to try to figure out how this happened. So whether or not she is actually the judge on the case is a question, is a randomness question. So there is a wheel that all the judges in that jurisdiction are on, and my understanding actually is she got on the case, on the search warrant case, by random selection. He did not, though everyone had reported that she was, handpicked. In fact, my friends down in Florida said that it was really random selection, and that's how she got it. Now the reporting is that she's preliminarily involved. So here, I don't know whether she's going to wind up on the case permanently. There are some local rules that would suggest that judges who are involved in preliminary matters stay on the case, and other jurisdictions have a rule that when the case is brought after the search warrant, there's a random draw again. I don't know what the local rule is. And then on the question of whether she's chastened, who knows? Who knows what this will entail?
Were you ever
I should just explain.
Wait,
I should explain to people though what she was chastened. She was chastened for. Back in the Mar-a-Lago thing, she issued this order appointing a special master to review all these secret government documents from Mar-a-Lago, and the appeals court,
which would have slowed down the whole process.
And the appeals court issued a 21-page opinion blasting Cannon's decision to block the FBI from using thousands of documents until they were reviewed by a special master. It was a unanimous ruling, said Cannon never had the jurisdiction to order the review or prohibit the FBI from looking at the documents. The court also rejected the idea that Trump should be treated differently from any other target.
So can we stay on the chastened topic? Were you ever reversed in a dramatic fashion where the judges no, I'm serious, where the judges were very critical of your decision making?
Not that I can remember, but then again, I would have repressed it. Not that I can.
Well, how about your friends who made a fellow federal judges? What is the impact on? I know everybody's different. When you are really, that was a pretty heavy slap at Judge Cannon from the appellate court.
The Attorney General Barr said she was wrong.
Yeah, even Barr,
remember?
You're right. Trump's. What usually is the response from a judge when he or she has been treated like that by his or her superiors?
Well, I mean, you want to crawl under a rock. There's no question about it. There's no question. What they were saying to her, which we had talked about on your show, is that she was completely out of her lane. The investigation of a criminal case is the responsibility of the prosecutor. And while the judge has oversight responsibility, she cannot meddle. And that's what she did. She walked out of her lane. Now she's in the lane of a neutral arbiter of what the charges are, and it's a different issue. There are lots of ways that she could put her finger on the scale here. When Trump, asked for discovery, she could give Trump, more discovery than he otherwise would be entitled to. She could also much more significantly, considerably slow down the proceedings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And slowing it down could have interesting implications. I mean, if Trump were elected in 2024, sworn in 2025, and this case were still going, he could make it go away.
Judge
Wait. Fill in those blanks. Make it go away because he's a sitting president under that office of legal counsel.
Yes, the Department of Justice.
President, and he could direct the Department of Justice
to drop
the charges.
Yeah.
Or he could, although there's some constitutional question about this, he could pardon himself. So delay is it's not likely. This is not a difficult case. This is a pretty straightforward case. It's not likely that it would take, over a year and a half to try. But that's one way that the judge could slow down the proceedings.
We're talking to former federal judge Nancy Gertner.
So, Judge Gertner, I was wondering, because a lot of people that are on Trump's side are saying that this is the President Biden's Justice Department going after his chief rival in the election. What I'm wondering from you is, what's the procedure for the prosecutor, Jack Smith? I assume he's got to run this by Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, but how does it work when you're about to indict the former president? Does he have to call up Joe Biden and ask him permission? I don't think so.
My understanding, and this is only from the reporting, and also from knowing Garland, is that Garland is in charge. Merrick Garland is in charge, but in appointing Jack Smith, he made it clear that decisions with respect to prosecution he was not going to intervene in at all. Okay. And so my understanding, just again from the reporting, is that Smith would have notified Garland, but Garland would not have put pressure in any direction. And my understanding is that Biden did not know one or the other.
Okay.
So, Nancy Gertner, this is, I think, the biggest issue, at least for me. When you and Larry Tribe were obviously from Harvard Law School, constitutional scholar, your buddy, were kind enough to come on television with me. One of the things we talked about fairly regularly in the beginning of these multiple investigations is, could Donald Trump serve as president from jail? And my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what you and Professor Tribe taught me is there's provision in the 14th Amendment that bars any federal elected official from serving in federal office if he or she is engaged in, quote, insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution of the United States or given aid and comfort to the enemies. So my interpretation is, and here's where you can disabuse me if I'm wrong, if this trial happens and he's convicted and goes to jail, and we'll ask you in a minute if you think he would get jail time, or same thing in Manhattan County, or, not Georgia, because that may be insurrection related. On this case alone, as serious as it is, conspiracy charges, obstruction of justice, if he's convicted and sent to jail, he could both run and serve as president of the United States. Is that not correct?
Yes, because these charges, two things about the 14th Amendment. It doesn't enforce itself. So even in assuming he were convicted, let's assuming there was a January 6th indictment and he was convicted of it, some other entity would have to take action. It would be either Congress that would have to take action to bar him from office, or it would be an application to a court. It's not the Constitution is never self-enforcing. Some other entity would have to take action. Now, that's the January 6th case. One could argue that the Mar-a-Lago case is also about insurrection.
How so?
Or acting against the interests of the government because of the two things. One is the espionage claim is a claim of the unlawful retention of national defense information. If there's any indication in the case, and we don't know that Smith doesn't have to prove this, but if there's any indication that Trump actually showed any of these documents to anyone, particularly an adversary, then this would amount to a conviction that would at least implicate the 14th Amendment. On its face, it doesn't. In other words, just looking right now, retention of national defense information, retention of classified information, even obstruction of justice, you have to take some additional steps, which the facts could bear out, to get it under the 14th Amendment. But even if you do, there has to be an entity that would enforce it. Congress, the courts, it would have to be an entity that would enforce it. And there would be constitutional challenges up and down the line. So these charges are not likely to trigger that. Any charges out of January 6th are another question.
Understood. So, do you have a question?
No, go ahead.
I have a million. A couple of more. We're not going to keep you all day, but I've been waiting to talk to you for 15 hours, so you're not going anywhere, Judge Gertner, for a second. You seem to intimate, I don't know if I read this right, you can envision a situation where there could be a trial and a verdict in this case before people go to the polls in 2024? And I assume that means this would move to the front of the pack ahead of Manhattan, ahead of Georgia, which is allegedly going to be announced in August. So you're saying within a year and a couple of months, this could come to closure?
The Florida courts are well known for their speed.
Really?
Again, if Judge Cannon is the one in charge, she would have control over that, but they're well known for their speed. Someone on television yesterday was describing it as a, quote, rocket docket jurisdiction. Where cases get tried very quickly. So yes, it could go, but this is all speculation, because at the same time, if I were representing Donald Trump, I would make sure I would raise every conceivable, imaginable, constitutional, legal, statutory issue that I can, not necessarily even for delay, although that's in his interest as well, but because it's a pretty big deal and you want to make sure that you've defended the person well. So yes, on the one hand, it's a rocket docket. On the other hand, there are bound to be lots of issues here.
By the way, for those who only know Nancy Gertner from her time on the federal court, she's arguably one of the best criminal defense lawyers on the planet in parts of her other life. One more question about the trial. You preside over the trial of a former president, and he is found guilty on all 7 of these counts, including espionage, obstruction of justice. He's a first-time offender, as serious as the charges and the conviction would be. What do you do with the defendant after his conviction?
You've asked me this before, and
I'm going to keep asking you too.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there are the regular rules. I mean, when the federal sentencing guidelines came into effect, white-collar offenders who had been 50% given probation, 50% of the time were given probation before the guidelines. Suddenly, it was down to single digits. Everyone got prison time of some time, but I don't think that there's any way of predicting the way this case would go and what the sentence would be. He's certainly vulnerable to imprisonment. There's no question about it. The charges are very serious from what we understand, but who knows? I don't think that there's any way of predicting it.
Well, I have one more related question to that, and you can be sick of this question too. When you're deciding that issue as a federal judge, I've talked to you about, I think one of these guys, maybe these guys are friends of yours, Jack Goldsmith, who I think worked for George Bush in the Office of Legal Counsel,
right,
and Bob Bauer, who was the counsel for Barack Obama, were on my television show a couple of years ago after they wrote a great book about how to fix what Trump broke. And the only issue this Republican and Democrat disagreed on is to whether or not Trump should be prosecuted. Not whether he had committed crimes, but whether he should be prosecuted for those crimes. So I guess my question flowing from that, is it appropriate for a judge to consider not just the record of the individual, Donald Trump, not just the crimes for which he's committed, but can he or she, the judge, consider the potential damage to the country, if you believe that there's damage to the country, of either imprisoning or not imprisoning a convicted former president? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think there's no bar. There's nothing that stops a judge from considering that. So let me give you an analogy, which is just a silly analogy. If I send Mr. Smith to prison, his entire company will fall and there'll be 9,000 people unemployed. It's not unusual in sentencing that you will consider what broadly the scholars talk about third-party harms.
I see.
Yeah.
And so, yes, a judge could, there's no question a judge could consider that. There's no question about it. Whether they should and how that would figure in, who knows? Yeah.
Judge Gertner, I have a question about the Eileen Cannon thing, too, and she's the justice that was basically ridiculed from coast to coast about her decision of saying to the FBI, blocking the FBI from these documents until they had this special master review. I mean, so she could either be, chastened and humiliated by what happened to her, or she could be digging in. She's one of the justices that came up through the Federalist Society, that they were very instrumental in getting Justice Kavanaugh on the court, Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Gorsuch, very conservative, but more conservative about things, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, like about abortion and social issues. I don't think they're necessarily, let's throw law and order out the window. I don't think that's their thing, I don't think. The question is, you mentioned before that this Justice Cannon could put her finger on the scale. Judge, what? Judge, Justice. Yeah. She could put her finger on the scale, and if she were to put her finger on the scale and make it very difficult for the prosecutors, and somehow, you're a judge, you can influence what the jury hears and doesn't hear and all that. Maybe if she could go overboard, and the jury acquits, is that the end of it? Or so there's no appealing the way she conducted the courtroom testimony or the discovery or any of those things. She could do it the way she wants, and even if it seems to strain the normal procedures, she could just do it, and that could be the end of it.
An acquittal in the United States is the end of the discussion.
Okay.
By the way,
however she tries the case that resulted in acquittal, it would be over.
Okay.
Now the government can do things can object, can try to file appeals from rulings that they think are wrong. They can file what's known as an interlocutory appeal, which is an appeal before the case is over. Those kinds of appeals are rarely granted. Usually, a court of appeals will say, "Let's wait for the whole case to be over." But again, who knows what would happen in this case? I'm blocking on the Trump ally that was tried for money laundering, bank fraud.
Paul
Manafort.
Paul Manafort. Yeah.
That's right. He went before a judge who was constantly out of lane, who was constantly summarizing the defense evidence, etc. Government did not do anything, and ultimately Manafort was convicted. But if the government doesn't seek interlocutory appeal of some really crazy opinions, or if the Court of Appeals doesn't take an interlocutory appeal, and he is acquitted, he is acquitted.
Yeah.
There's nothing more.
One question, last question, but I just want to read something. It was just on CNN. The Speaker of the House says, this is incredible to me, it's unconscionable for a president, meaning Biden, to indict the leading candidate of the opposing, that is opposing him. So it's basically fanning the flames for all those who want to. This is just unconscionable. Last question is particularly in light of the fact I said what a fabulous defense attorney you are. Last night there was a lawyer, Jim Trusty, who was on CNN, one of Trump's lawyers defending him. He and this other lawyer, John Rowley, both resigned from Trump's legal team this morning, and Trump posted the following: "For purposes of fighting the greatest witch hunt of all time, now moving to the Florida courts, I'll be represented by Todd Blanche Esquire and a firm to be named later." We just want to make sure that's not your firm. Is that correct?
It's like a player to be named later.
Exactly.
Right.
You're not the player, are you?
No, I'm not the player, but I could think of a couple of people who might want it.
I know who that person is, by the way.
That's right.
Indeed.
Right.
You do? Well, who is it?
We can say. Say it.
Yeah, you can say it. You should. Just Alan Dershowitz.
Yeah.
Oh God, Alan Dershowitz. Okay.
Right. But let me say one other thing. In one sense, the press has been chafing at the fact that the indictment is sealed and won't be unsealed in the ordinary course until Tuesday, and they want to have Jack Smith come forward and try to move to unseal it, given the clatter on the other side. there's an argument that he shouldn't do that, that he should wait until Tuesday in the ordinary course, because it may be that everyone will have egg on their face if this indictment is more than just, oh my goodness, he unlawfully retained documents. But if the indictment includes, and I don't know if it does, that he showed them to people, that he talked about it, that he actually actively promoted the information that he had, that would be a different matter. And then presumably even the people who are coming out now and talking about a witch hunt will have egg on their face.
Well, remember, Caitlin Collins in the town hall on CNN asked the president if he'd shown these documents to anyone, and he danced around the answer. He didn't really say no. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. And I wondered, wow.
Well, no, but I mean, I think the other thing is, people, he has admitted to the underlying case.
Yes.
There's really, when you think about what has to be litigated, that the documents were in his home, clear.
Mm-hmm.
That he knew that they were, some were classified, they were classified on their face. That he knew that he wasn't supposed to have it. Even if that weren't clear in January of 2021, it was certainly clear by mid-2022. And then he is saying, not only do I have these documents, but I have a right to have these documents. And he was saying, I declassified them. Now he's not saying that anymore. I mean, he has admitted to the bedrock of the case. And so the notion that Jack Smith could say, well, no harm, no foul, just doesn't make sense.
Right, and supposedly they had this document that he was holding, I don't know if he was showing it to people at Bedminster when people were there, among a group of people saying, that, and this was about a plan to invade Iran, and he was talking about, I couldn't declassify it because I can't declassify this because I already left the White House. So that seems to be a big time admission.
Right. I mean, I think that given what his inability to control what he says, why are the numbers of lawyers who figure into the grand jury presentation? These are lawyers who Trump loses the attorney-client privilege because he was using lawyers basically to evade a legal requirement, not legal advice. So the testimony against him could well be, as the January 6th presentation was, largely by people who were in his camp. So no, I think that the only play, I mean, we'll have to see what the evidence looks like, but certainly an important play for him will be delay.
Nancy Gertner, Judge Gertner, we really appreciate your time as always. We know you had a busy day. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Nancy Gertner.
Thank you.
We've been talking with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. She's a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a Boston Public Radio contributor. Up next, we are going to take a musical break. We are so excited. Before opening the phone and text lines again on Trump's historical federal indictment, so we can all get really depressed, it's time for a live Music Friday performance, courtesy of Mary Gaucher, the singer-songwriter.
We're passing the mic because we want to know what matters to you.
Hola, my name is Annabelle Rondon. I'm from Haverhill, Massachusetts, and I'm an immigrant, I'm a Latina, and what matters to me is community, which is my family, my children, and I have made a personal commitment to amplify leaders of color in my spaces, specifically the planning and community development field.
Your voice matters. GBH 89.7. What matters to you.
Support for GBH comes from you and South County, Rhode Island, featuring 100 miles of coastline and 20 public beaches. South County visitors can find many ways to enjoy the water in the Ocean State. Learn more at southcountyri.com. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business by offering cybersecurity, internet, and mobile solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. Comcast Business, internet required.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. We're now joined by legendary singer-songwriter Mary Gaucher. If you want to catch her in person, you've got about 5 minutes to get to the library. Or there's another good option. You can catch her tonight at the great Club Passim in Harvard Square. She has a sold-out show at 7, but there are a couple tickets left for 9:30. For more information, go to Passim, Passim, Mary.org. Mary, we're thrilled to have you here. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Well, you have talked and written in your book, Saved by Song, a lot about how songwriting can help deal with trauma. So what were you talking about?
You know, I found it sort of through trial and error in my own life, writing songs that songs were part of me staying sober. I got sober in July of 1990, thanks to the friendly police in Dorchester. After I got arrested for drunk driving, I had a come to Jesus moment, and I realized, Mary, you have a problem. And so I got sober, and in my sobriety, I got brought over to Club Passim in Harvard Square, and I saw how original songs were made and played and how you get started, and I started writing songs, and I began writing about my truth, and next thing you know, I'm staying sober. 10 years go by, and I decided I'm going to do this for real, and I became a songwriter, moved to Nashville in 2001, and through music and song, I've stabilized, and I found that singing through hard stuff connects people. And then I got asked to write with wounded veterans.
That's incredible. Yes. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. At about 20 years sober, I was invited to participate in a program called Songwriting with Soldiers, which pairs professional songwriters with wounded veterans and their families. And I had the experience behind me of knowing the alchemy of music and song and the transformative properties, particularly around trauma. Because as my understanding goes, and I was taught by the great Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who's based here in the Boston area, that trauma is removal. And so when you are deeply traumatized, you're very removed, and that's why there's such a crisis of veteran suicide. Yeah. So getting people back is the hope, and we can do this through music and song, because when a song is working, it connects, and people come forward with the two big words you need to hear so desperately, me too. And it transcends all the politics and all the belief systems and all the divisive things, because it goes to the core of what it means to be human. It's not a political or a belief system-based thing. We don't sing about beliefs, we sing about emotion.
You know, when you say you got sober in 1990 after drunk driving arrest, how did you get sober? I mean, so many people that we all know in our lives have tried and failed and tried and failed. What worked for you?
I don't know an answer to that.
You don't?
I just know laying on the floor in Area B, something happened to me, and I surrendered. I just gave up. I realized there was a war, I lost. Drugs and alcohol won. I had to find another way, and I asked for help, and there's so much help available when you're ready and willing to ask for help.
You know, Mary Gaucher, I know a lot about your music and songwriting life. I knew nothing about your prior life in the restaurant business in Boston.
Yeah.
Were you a business kind of person, or were you a chef, or were you both? What were you?
Both, yeah. I had a restaurant around the corner from here called the Dixie Kitchen Restaurant. I did Cajun food for almost 10 years on Massachusetts Avenue.
Were you good?
Good, not great. We had a concept that really worked. Everything was under $10. It was traditional Cajun cuisine. I was born in New Orleans. I'm originally from Louisiana. We had the plastic sort of taped on tablecloths.
Love those.
Trivial Pursuit cards on the table. And we were fast, and we moved quickly the line. We had po' boys, we had jambalaya, we had gumbo. So the concept wasn't fine cuisine, although I went to the Cambridge School of Culinary Arts and graduated from there, yeah.
I didn't know there was a Cambridge School of Culinary
Arts.
Porter Square.
Wow,
up there in
did not know
North
that.
Cambridge.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, when you listen, everybody who knows your music knows you're a pretty courageous soul. What you write about, what you're willing to talk about, and thinking of courage. I think Marjorie said this before she introduced you, when she was teasing you coming. You were OG at the Grand Ole Opry. What's that mean?
Original gay.
Original gay. So when you walked out on the stage, weren't you terrified, or what were you?
Here's what happened. Marty Stewart, who was in line at the time for Porter Wagner's job as the master of ceremonies of the Grand Ole Opry, the longest running live radio variety show in the world. Marty Stewart brought me on. It was on national television, and I did not show up in a pride shirt or with a rainbow flag. I just showed up as me. Marty wanted me to play my song Mercy Now. He wanted to make a statement, but he couldn't, so he had me make his statement for him. And I didn't announce that This was a lesbian singing to you live from the stage. I just showed up as me, and it was historic because I was the first openly gay person to take the stage, obviously not the first gay person. And nothing really was frightening about it because Marty had my back.
Yeah. What year is this?
2001.
2001.
You know, I'm nervous
Not
to
that
ask.
long ago.
Not really.
No, not that long ago
Yeah,
at
but
all.
that's a very conservative institution.
Yes. Yes.
So you're going to play a couple things for us. The thing I'm nervous about is I'm afraid to ask, are you going to play Mercy Now? Because if you say no, I'm going to be upset.
I'm playing it.
Oh, you are? Oh, you are. So do you want to do that? And
Let's
then you'll come
do that.
back and talk a little bit. This is one of the great, this is Mary Gaucher, as you've learned. She'll be at Club Passim tonight. 7 o'clock show is sold out. There are a few tickets left for the later show. You go to Passim, PASS.com to this fabulous, institution. I hope people don't consider that to be a pejorative thing. It's such an important historical place. This is one of the great songs ever. Mercy Now, performed by Mary Gaucher.
My father sure could use a little mercy now. The fruits of his labor fall and rot slowly on the ground. His work is almost over, won't be long, he won't be around. I love my father, he could use some mercy now. And my brother sure could use a little mercy now. He's a stranger to freedom, shackled to his fear and doubt. That he lives in, it's almost more than living will allow. I love my brother, he could use some mercy now. My church and my country, they could use a little mercy now. They sink into a poison pit, it's gonna take forever to climb out. They carry the weight of the faithful who follow them down. I love my church and country, they could use some mercy now. Every living thing could use a little mercy now. Only the hand of grace can end the race towards another mushroom cloud. People in power who'll do anything to keep their crown. I love life, life itself could use some mercy now. We all could use a little mercy now. Oh, I know we don't deserve it, but we need it anyhow. We hang in the balance, we dangle between hell and hallowed ground. And every single one of us could use some mercy now. Every single one of us could use some mercy now.
Back and join us, please. Mercy Now, which is just a spectacular song. Again, at Club Passim tonight, 7 o'clock show sold out, later show, a couple tickets left. Go to passim.com. Why'd you bring the book back?
Because I have a feeling you're going to ask a question that I could answer with a short paragraph from the book.
Why don't you ask yourself the question you want asked, and then answer it from your book?
And tell us, Saved by a Song. 2021, I think it came out?
Yeah, it came out in 21. It's called Saved by a Song, which is sort of my story. Music and song have been a form of salvation for me, and then I watched it work for so many wounded veterans. To have that story that they were struggling to tell be told by song, and have people come up to them and say, I see you, I am you. The Me Too is a very powerful thing when you feel removed. So, when people ask me if I believe songs can change the world, my answer is always yes, I believe it, absolutely. And I think I understand how it works. A song has the power to change a heart. Songs can generate empathy. A changed heart then has the power to change a mind. And when a mind changes, a person changes. When people change, the world changes. One song, one heart, one mind, one person at a time. Bruce Springsteen says music is a repair shop. Basically, I'm a repair man. The boss knows. The boss is right. Songs do have the power to repair hearts and help heal souls. That's why I called my book Saved by a Song.
Saved by a Song. There you go, Shay.
So tell us too a little bit about, I mean, you talked about being gay. I know you were adopted and you dealt with that. When you talk about the trauma, it was all those things together, going through being, dealing with the alcoholism, all those things together that kind of combined to what you put in this book.
Yes. See, I was adopted at a year old. And in a closed adoption system, which means I was never going to be allowed to have my original birth certificate. And I'm still not allowed to have my original birth certificate. But I found later in life a way to get some of my story anyway. But I was adopted at a year old, so I spent a year in what they called an orphanage, which is a strange thing when you have parents, to be in an orphanage.
Yes.
It was in New Orleans. And I was adopted by a Catholic couple. It was a Catholic orphanage and brought to Baton Rouge from New Orleans. But something in me didn't feel right as I became a teenager. I just felt, I didn't know what it was. And as I got a little older, I moved to drugs and alcohol really quickly. And it took me until my mid to late 40s to realize that year in that orphanage did something to me. And then I found out through music, actually, playing in New Orleans, somebody told me their mom volunteered at the orphanage to hold the babies because there were more babies than nuns. It was like, oh my God. So I think that early trauma really did a number on me. And it was a removal. And that feeling of removal, I could bridge with drugs and alcohol, but it was temporary. It wasn't a solution. It was a Band-Aid.
And when you talk about being removed in terms of your story or in terms of veterans, I think you mean being removed from your feelings, or
being removed from self and being removed from community. Always feeling like an outsider looking in, or a plate of glass between me and my ability to fully connect. Taking that glass apart has been my life's work. And I was just so blessed that I ended up with a guitar in my hand and an art form that can alchemize some of the trauma and bring me home and help me to help others to come home.
Yeah, you talk like you sing. I guess that's not a surprise. You know what I mean? So, by the way, Ajda from Somerville texted in, I remember the Dixie Kitchen and went there often as a Berkeley student. I miss their shrimp po' boys. Haven't found anything like it in Boston ever since then. So somebody thinks you're a pretty good cook.
We have a lot of text messages about a great performance that you did. I think it was in Yarmouthport last year at the Harwich Cran Festival.
Yep.
Yeah, and someone else wants me to ask you about Miss Folk America by Faith Soloway and wants to know if you're still in touch with any of the stars, Katie Curtis, Jennifer Kimball, Laura McKenna. So tell that's from Greta in Arlington.
Miss Folk America is a spoof on the Miss America contest. And a lot of us female folk singers here in Boston were part of that. Faith Soloway is the older sister of Joey Soloway, the creator of Transparent, which was a television hit.
Yes.
They're comedic.
Which is now about to be on Broadway, by the way. You know
Transparent,
that.
the musical,
Yes,
is
indeed.
on its way.
Yeah.
Couldn't be more proud of my friend Faith Soloway. And I was on the plane here yesterday with Lori McKenna, who goes back and forth to Nashville writing. I see these women regularly, and I'm so happy to have that question.
She's a local. She's down on
Lori
the South
McKenna
Shore.
sang Girl Crush on my show
Yep.
about 6 months ago. I almost passed out. You know, speaking of that, do you get insulted when someone says, I think of somebody else when I think of you? Is that okay, or are you going to get angry at me?
Oh, no, unless it's somebody
John Prine is like...
John is the greatest influence of my life in
is
terms
that true?
of songwriting.
I didn't know.
He's my teacher, my mentor.
Well, you are, I mean... I'm interchangeable.
Sort of the lesbian John.
Did you get to meet him?
I worked with John for 2 years. I opened a lot of shows for John, and he was a friend. Yeah, and his wife Fiona still is a friend.
Yeah. I mean, he's very much missed, is he not?
Every single day.
So let me ask you one more thing before you play for us again. How did this all happen to you? How did you get together with the guitar and your ability to write music? You've obviously got a great voice. You have probably had that since you were a little girl. But how did this all happen?
I think there's a divine spirit or angels or somebody has my back. You know, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't get sober, and I probably wouldn't have gotten sober if I hadn't have gotten arrested for drunk driving, which felt like the worst day and most humiliating thing that ever happened to me. Turned out to be the springboard from which a whole new life was given to me. So it's hard to answer that good question.
Yeah.
I just find it all so mysterious and miraculous, and I'm amazed by there's this instinct that we all have inside us to live and survive, and it pushes us into things that we wouldn't have do otherwise. And I think that's how I ended up with the guitar in my hand. It was going to help me. Of course, I didn't know that, but it knew that somehow.
You know, talk about the small circle. We're talking about the Soloways. Faith Soloway wrote Band in Boston that you and I were just lucky enough to be a small part of for Urban Improv.
That's right.
In addition to everything else that they do. What are you going to play for us?
Well, I have a new record out. It's called Dark Enough to See the Stars. The title came out of a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speech. And I'd love to play that if that's all right.
Fantastic.
Oh, we'd love that. Mary
Thank
Gaucher. Mary Gaucher, again, Saved by a Song is the name of the book. And latest CD is Dark Enough to See the Stars. And again, she's at Club Passim tonight. PASSIM.com. Couple of tickets left for the late show. And I think based on the last 20 minutes, you know you want to be there. Here she is again, Mary Gaucher.
At the bottom of my tears, on the backside of my fears, at the center of the pain, I hear my voice call out your name. Days go by, nothing works. I can't believe how much this hurts. Don't know where you are. It's dark enough to see the stars. Dark enough to see the stars. Dark enough to see the light. In an ocean black and deep, in the middle of the night, as I hold on to your love,
like those lights from up above. I have drifted out so far, it's dark enough to see the stars. Curse the clock, time is a thief. Every life it measures brief. Every child is born to die, but the soul is born to fly under heaven's canopy. Tiny diamonds, you and me, lightning bugs inside a jar. It's dark enough to see the stars, dark enough to see the stars, dark enough to see the light in an ocean black and deep. In the middle of the night, as I hold on to your love, like those lights from up above. I've drifted out so far, it's dark enough to see the stars. I've been carried out so far, it's dark enough to see the stars.
Thank you so much.
That was the voice of Mary Gauthier. She has 2 shows tonight at Club Passim in Harvard Square. The 7 p.m., as we said, is sold out, but there are tickets. At least they were still available before we started the show. I hope they're still available for 9:30, and the virtual streams as well. For more information, go to passim.org. Thank you so much.
I keep saying .com. My apologies. It's .org?
I believe so. That's what it says in front of me. Passim.org.
.org. My apologies.
Passim is
Passim.org.
PASSIM.org. Passim, Club Passim in Passim in Cambridge. Thank you so much to Mary.
Thank you, Mary. That was
fabulous. That was fantastic.
It was great to have you.
Okay, back to reality after a quick break.
That was reality.
We were opening the phone and text floodgates. We've been talking all throughout the show about the historic federal indictment of former President Trump. How are you reacting to the news? Do you want him to be convicted? Do you want him to get acquitted? You don't think we should be doing this at all? Will American democracy survive the never-ending Trump show and all his...
Summer is heavily associated with going to the pool or the beach, but many children from low-income communities don't know how to swim, and it's generational.
Their families have never swam. They have a fear of the water.
How one nonprofit organization is changing that with free swimming lessons taught by teens for teens. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Bunker Hill Community College, offering students 6-week summer sessions to help them achieve their college and skill goals. 2 sessions, starting June 5th and July 17th. Registration at bhcc.edu/summer. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Rooted. In this offbeat comedy, all it takes is 2 sisters and a treehouse to accidentally start a cult. Now through June 25th at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. The rest of the show is yours. Calls and texts at 877-301-8970. Obviously, we're talking about the twice impeached, now twice indicted, former President Donald Trump. Remember, this new indictment is on top of the 34 felony counts in New York. the E. Jean Carroll civil ruling that he had sexually abused her and defamed her, potential of, and by the way, a new case there because she's amended her matter, potential other charges about trying to steal an election in Georgia, and of course the January 6th insurrection investigation being done by the same special counsel that indicted him in the Mar-a-Lago case. What's your reflection on this? I mean, some people are celebrating the news. Some people, even who are not Trump fans, are mourning the fact that it's come to the fact that a former president is being indicted on so many counts. I'm mourning my concern that democracy could go right down the tube with these indictments if tens of millions of people say even more energetically, this is the kind of person we want to lead us. The number is 877-301-8970. We played you just a little bit from Trump's post on last night, a video on Truth Social. We played you some sound where it sounded to me, when he's talking about warfare, that he was essentially once again inciting people to do horrible things. Here he is, where he claims his indictment is just another hoax.
They go after a popular president, a president that got more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country, by far, and did much better the second time in the election than the first. And they go after him on a boxes hoax, just like the Russia hoax and all of the others. This has been going on for 7 years. They can't stop because it's election interference at the highest level. There's never been anything like what's happened. I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent person.
877-301-8970. There's the indictee. Tuesday, he will, at least he says, he will be in court in Florida to answer to these 7 charges, which include conspiracy, obstruction of justice, which Judge Gertner suggested just a few minutes ago with us are really serious matters, not trivial ones like some people consider the charges, the criminal charges in New York City. 877-301-8970. Is this not still sort of an out-of-body experience?
Well, it is. I mean, it's never happened before. Criminal charges against a president or former president of the United States, it hasn't happened before. As we all know, I guess the closest we came to this was when the Republicans went up and told Richard Nixon he had to get out of office after the Watergate scandal, but there was no federal criminal indictment against Richard Nixon. So this is totally new territory, and it's a very upsetting time. I mean, what's upsetting is that you keep harping on that so many Americans buy this guy's story.
And so many so-called leaders buy the story and are rushing to his side.
Well, I don't think the Republicans that are defending him buy his story. I think they feel that they need him to get reelected. So the people are putting their reelection in the Republican primary ahead of things. You've had, Jim Jordan rushing to say, I don't know what he said, it was a sad day for America, or a dark day for America. Kevin McCarthy saying this is Joe Biden essentially orchestrating this attack.
Why is Ron DeSantis, who's running against him, defending him?
Well, because Ron DeSantis, the only one who's really gone after him so far is Chris Christie, right? Chris Christie. Nikki Haley in kind of a veiled way saying that people over 75
we need a new generation. That's not exactly a tough criticism.
Well, the competency test is going directly at Trump. But, Ron DeSantis is just kind of hoping that somehow he can go to the right of Trump with none of the appeal. I mean, Trump is a very successful TV star, and people that are TV stars do very well, as we know. Ronald Reagan did very well when he ran for president as a TV star. I mean, Bill Clinton wasn't a TV star, but he had that whole thing about him.
Yeah, he did.
So, Ron DeSantis does not have that. But, Josh Hawley, J.D. Vance, Jim Jordan, they're all kind of saying, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Gates, they're all kind of saying the same sort of thing. This is disgrace. This is a dark day. This is terrible. This is a orchestrated attack by the Democrats. I don't think they're doing that because they believe it. I think they're doing that because they know they need it. You think Kevin McCarthy is doing it because he believes it? I don't think so.
Well, Kevin McCarthy is one of the people who said on January 6th it's over, essentially, like Lindsey Graham, and apparently it's not over. 877-301-8970. So any reflections you personally have in the wake of the announcement of these indictments, announced, by the way, by Donald Trump himself in typical Trump fashion, I should say. I don't think we have a comment yet from the special counsel and probably won't till Tuesday.
Oh, by the way, as long as you mentioned Ron DeSantis, what he said is, why so zealous in pursuing Trump yet so passive about Hillary Clinton or Hunter Biden? Hunter Biden is now under investigation by the Department of Justice, right? And there may well be some shenanigans involving Hunter Biden. There's been no connection that anybody can point to that's telling the truth between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And then we all recall, how many Benghazi hearings do we have about Hillary? 8 or 9 Benghazi hearings. How many investigations of her emails, of her server, all these? I don't think that was passive, but this is kind of they try to ghost light you and hope you don't remember all those investigations involving Hillary Clinton, not to mention Hillary and her husband. How long did Whitewater last when he was in the White House? Forever. What did they find about Whitewater? The Clintons lost money in Whitewater.
877-301-8897. I'm really ready to have a stroke over the state of affairs. I am. I just can't believe, I'm not naive, but I guess I am. I can't believe that people aren't standing up and saying, this is a bridge too far. Fran and Methuen, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for calling. Hi. Fran.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
What's up?
Okay. I would love to see this guy finally behind bars. We've had enough. The January 6th insurrection, his cast of characters, Roger Stone, Flynn, Manafort, they're all a bunch of hoodlums. The most disturbing thing I heard today was the fact that Judge Arlene Cannon is going to be sitting and hearing the case. That, to me, is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
For those,
they shopped around.
Thank you. Well, actually, Judge Gertner says that's not necessarily the case. Her understanding is it was a random selection. But for those who were not, Fran, thank you, we're not listening earlier in the show, Aileen Cannon is the one who basically was nominated by Trump, went in the tank for Trump, and then was excoriated in a ruling by her superiors appellate court, federal courts, and amazingly, at least temporarily, is the judge in the new Trump proceedings. Nancy Gertner says it's not clear she'll be there the whole way around. Marjorie asked the question about whether or not she'd be chastened by the embarrassment she went through. Who the hell knows? 877-301-8970. Could you play that little bit of what Trump just had to say a couple of minutes ago back in Brighton, please?
I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent person.
Yeah, you know what it sounds exactly like? One of the most famous quotes in American history from Richard Nixon. Remember what he said?
I am not a crook.
I am not a crook.
I know.
I am not a crook.
And it turns out, of course, he was a crook.
Exactly.
You know, Maggie Haberman, a great reporter, who wrote a book about Trump called Confidence Man, has reported on him since she used to work at the New York Post, and he was calling up gossip writers in New York City, pretending to be somebody that he wasn't. John Barron, I think was his name.
Something like that.
And he named his son.
We played those tapes. It sounds exactly like him.
Yeah.
Everybody
this is
knew
John
it was
Barron, and he named his kid Barron. He doesn't like his son Barron because Barron is taller than he is. I guess that really annoys him. But in any case, Maggie Haberman has this piece about how Trump was gathered with his political advisors in the office near his poolside cottage at his club in Bedminster, New Jersey, when the phone rang about 7 o'clock on Thursday night. It was one of his lawyers calling them to tell him he had been indicted. And I love the way she reminded us all of this. He had been indicted for the second time in less than 3 months.
Yeah, well, she also goes on to say there, it's significant, which I think it is. It's so Trump, he's surrounded by political and communications advisors, not by lawyers, even though once they got the target letter, he knew that an indictment or set of indictments was very likely to happen. Victor in Rhode Island, welcome. Victor.
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
Yeah.
What's up?
Well, I am anti-Trump and I believe in the rule of law, but I don't think that we should be celebrating what is happening here. This is really horrible, and the Republicans are just weaponizing this. I mean, they say Democrats are weaponizing this. The Republicans are. This is a sad day for our country.
Well, you know, Victor, I have to say, I wouldn't use the word celebrate to describe how I'm feeling, and I can't even come up with a verb, but I'm actually pleased, I guess is a better word, that the Justice Department was willing to stand up to criminality, even if it comes from a person who was once the most powerful person on the planet. I guess I should say alleged criminality. That, to me, shows that one part of our system works. The only question, as I said at 11 o'clock, is does the democracy part of our system work? And that remains to be seen. Victor, thanks for the call. 877-301-8970
well, I guess,
is the number.
You know, what Victor raises is the question, do you want the former president to be prosecuted or don't you? And some people think that's a bad idea.
You mean even some people who think he's committed a crime don't think he should be prosecuted?
Yes, I mean, there was a big debate over Nixon, although, you know, Nixon, needless to say, was at a lower level than Trump, at least by these accusations that we're talking about in the case that he just was found guilty of sexually assaulting a woman and then defaming her. So do you want us to be a government of laws or don't you? And I guess to me, it's important that you not let someone get away with this, even if they are the President of the United States. I mean, it's a big deal, I think, to share classified information or to take classified information about wars and plans to invade other countries like Iran. And we know, and they have a tape of him saying he's got that information, and he knew he was supposed to give it back. They got this kid down in Dighton that was doing the Teixeira, that was the National Guardsman, that was putting stuff online about classified documents, and he's facing, 25 years in prison? He's probably going to do a lot of years in prison.
Can I speak to the whole issue you broached about, even if he committed a crime, is it in the interest of this country to prosecute him? Jill Wine-Banks, who you probably remember, she's on MSNBC from time to time now. She was the only woman on the Watergate prosecution team, Richard Nixon. And I interviewed her on Greater Boston before I left a couple of months ago. And I asked her, she said to me, I don't know if I asked her or she just volunteered, she was an outlier in that group. She believed that he should be prosecuted criminally. And you know why she said, which is really prescient, I think. The reason Jill Wine-Banks thought that Richard Nixon should be criminally prosecuted, because she said it would send a message to the next Richard Nixon, and I would argue Trump is Richard Nixon on steroids, that if you do this, you're going to have to pay a price. Trump, I'm assuming, operated under the assumption, it's never happened before, I've got away with everything in my life, and I'm going to continue to get away with this. Had Nixon been prosecuted, it's very possible even Trump, as lawless as he is, might have said, this is not something I want to do. And that's why this prosecution is so important in my estimation, regardless of outcome. It's so important so the next Donald Trump, next year or 20 years from now, knows that there's a price to pay for illegal behavior that's a risk to this country.
Well, all I know is that it's incredible and really depressing that he didn't pay contractors, had all these people working in his casinos, got away with that. He ran a racist apartment complex in New York City. He was found to have run a racist apartment complex by the courts. He got away with that. He defrauded all these people that were hoping to learn about business at Trump University. And it was so bad, he had to pay $25 million. And the charity was so corrupt that the state of New York said neither he nor his children, Ivanka and Don Jr., and I think Eric as well, I'm not sure, Barron so far has escaped any criminal allegations. And the other daughter has escaped any kind of criminal, Tiffany. But it's so bad that they can't run a charity again in the state of New York. The corruption has been litigated over and over and over, or the stealing litigated over and over. And I guess he thought he could get away with it, almost anything, I think.
That's true, because he has.
Well, he said, right? Shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue.
Kim in Foxborough, thanks for your patience. You're on Boston Public Radio. Welcome.
Welcome, or thank you.
You're welcome.
For taking my call.
Sure.
I'm sorry to be redundant, but I want to agree with both of you. But thankfully, but I don't think, with all the people that have said this, I don't think that it's a day or a time when we should be sad. I think it's a time when we should celebrate our democracy, because our democracy has proven that it is strong enough to do the right thing, and that it can survive the evils that have been put upon it by this person.
Well, Kim, I half agreed with you. It proves that our democracy can do the right thing. I don't know that we know yet that it can survive, because I, for one, worry about how the Trumpists and potential Trumpists are going to react to this. But the first half of what you said, I think, is totally true. Whether it's celebrate or some other word, It proves that no person, at least at this stage of the process, is above the law, which is one of the central principles of our democracy. Kim, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Here's Kyrie from Worcester. I think the unprecedented nature about this is another example of American exceptionalism at play. Like you said before, other democracies have tried their former leaders and survived. Why are we pretending that this shouldn't apply to us too? I think this should be the first domino in leaders actually being held accountable, and it should have started a long time ago.
Do you remember what Rick Steves said in response to that when Rick was with us in person for a change? A couple of hours ago, we talked about leaders of Italy, France, other places who've been tried, convicted, and jailed, and how those countries survived and maybe prospered. He talked about the flip side. Look at those countries that have not prosecuted. He cited Mussolini as an example, and he's done a lot of film work on elected leaders who became fascists and the consequence of failure to prosecute. So every argument I've heard is you break the law, you pay the price. Tom in Canterbury, Connecticut. Hi.
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 The effect this thing has had on me is that I don't watch the news anymore because everybody's, you can't really tell what's going on because this guy says this and that guy says that. The Republicans have, their range of people saying things, the Democrats, and it's just, I can't follow it. So I don't watch TV much anymore. I can't take very much of MSNBC. I watch a little, 5 minutes of Morning Joe is about all I can take of him. And the only times I watch CNN is when John King is on because he seems like the only guy that plays things straight or relatively straight.
Well, can I make a suggestion that Marjorie might make, Tom? I don't mean to be disrespectful. Read a damn newspaper. I mean, maybe try that. Read the Washington Post. Read the Boston Globe. Read the New York Times.
Read the Wall Street Journal. They have wacky editorials in the Wall Street Journal, but their reporting is very good. Newspapers actually report the news a lot more than cable TV does.
Is a really dangerous, with all due respect, is a really, really dangerous proposition. And I think there's a lot more clarity out there than you suggest. Thanks for your call.
Here's the thing that I think a lot of people that are in the Trump cult don't want to acknowledge.
He wasn't. You don't mean him. He wasn't.
No, but people that are in this Trump cult of believing all this stuff. Fox News just had to pay how much money?
$787 million.
Yeah, $787 million for knowingly lying over and over and over and over again. There are Sean Hannity, Maria Bartiromo, whatever her name is.
And they're doing it again now.
Lying about the election. They knew the election was fair and square. They knew there's always voter fraud in elections, but nowhere near the voter fraud that would have had any outcome in this election. They knew it, and they said it over and over again. So you know for sure they're lying. MSNBC is obviously very liberal and they're biased against Trump, but they're not lying in the same way that Fox is or some of these right-wing talk show hosts. There's a difference between opinion and lying. Barbara from Spencer, thank you for calling.
Hey.
Hi, thanks. I'm so glad I got in. I totally agree with everything Jim is saying. I do believe he should be prosecuted. This whole thing about the missing documents concerns me, especially when they're talking about Iran. What bothers me is the fact that they have only searched for the documents at Mar-a-Lago. However, if you all recall, and I never hear any of this, back in, I think it was about July of either 21 or 22, he hosted the Saudis at his golf course in New Jersey. Now, that might be just a coincidence, but missing documents, Saudis, Iran?
Well, can I tell you something that I think will make you feel a little better? I don't know the special counsel personally, but I've read every word I can find about this guy. And I would say if there's something to be found that was untoward behavior, this character will find it. So maybe it's not comforting.
I hope so.
And you know what, Nancy Gertner, Judge Gertner made a wonderful point, I think. We really don't know. I mean, the crimes for which he has been indicted based on the reporting so far, these 7, are pretty serious. We have no idea if that's the whole kettle of fish or if there is more to come Tuesday in court. So I would say, Barbara, I understand your anxiety, but I would stay tuned. This guy has a record of being really comprehensive, meaning the special counsel, and really thorough and really competent. So keep the faith.
I hope so, because it's just too coincidental.
I got it.
Yeah. No one talks about him hosting them at his golf course in New Jersey.
Well, I'm really glad you called. Thanks, Barbara. We appreciate it.
You know, I think that Jack Smith is a different person than Robert Mueller. I mean, Robert Mueller did find, was it 10 or 12 instances of obstruction of justice in the Mueller report. But then, of course, we all remember what happened. Attorney General Barr, before he changed his mind about Trump, came out and defended Trump and kind of
lied, basically, about what the Mueller report said.
Now he's changed his mind. I don't know if he was no longer invited to dinner parties in Georgetown.
Or you got to get clients. You got to have clients in the private sector.
The Attorney General has changed his mind, but I don't. And we all, I think, were fairly disappointed in Robert Mueller, because Robert Mueller was an older man who seemed not to be at the very top of his game when he testified. I don't think we had that problem with Jack
Read
Smith.
this from the Business Insider before we take a break. Do you see this?
Okay, Trump was DJing on the patio at Westminster and playing Elvis, Pavarotti, and James Brown tracks from an iPad after he found out about his second indictment.
Yeah, let me tell you, if I found out about a set of indictments, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be DJing, maybe throwing a little Springsteen, maybe a little Mary Gaucher.
Oh, people are asking, by the way, they're looking up her music.
Yeah.
It's not spelled the way it sounds. It's Mary, it looks like Gauthier, which Gauthhier. You don't pronounce it that way, but it's spelled Gauthier. If you look her up, it's Mary Gauthier. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and take more texts and calls from all of you. We're talking about the indictment of the former President of the United States. As Maggie Haberman points out in the New York Times, the second indictment of the president in 3 months. This is a criminal indictment as opposed to a civil indictment. We are taking your calls at 877-301-8970. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public.
UK Prime Minister Sunak talks trade, artificial intelligence, and the war in Ukraine on a visit to Washington. Kyiv's long-planned counteroffensive appears to have started as the dam destruction blame game unfolds.
Thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And the Boston Foundation. Knowing it will take all of us to improve lives and strengthen communities, TBF partners with leaders and changemakers to close opportunity gaps, advance equity, and power a better Boston. Learn more at tbf.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News from the Boston Public Library and facebook.com/GBH News. By the way, I'm a little embarrassed. We often say we don't know something about history. I didn't know what Jamie just told us. When people were texting saying, how do you pronounce Mary Gaucher's last name? And you spelled it for her. Well, Marjorie, did you know this?
What?
That if you go to our website at gbhnews.org/BPR, you can see the names of not only all the guests we had on the show today, but the names of all the guests we're going to have on the show tomorrow.
I did not know that,
Jim.
Jim.
Did you know that?
No, I probably should have known that. I did not.
So you did not need to text Marjorie or me. Just go to gbhnews.org/BPR.
Here's a text from Jim in Rockport. Trump is a con man. The people who are being conned want to believe that he's not a crook. They want to believe that he's fighting for them. Any good con must have people who want to believe.
24 hours a day. A sane person who is upright cannot, at least a significant chunk of those people, cannot think that every charge against this guy, every allegation of sexual abuse or rape, every criminal charge, that all of them are bogus. It's just not possible.
It's a witch hunt, Jim. They're coming after him because they don't like his policies. These women are coming after him because they want to write books and make money, even though none of them have made money off this, as far as I know. Has one of them made money? I don't think. Oh, E. Jean Carroll is going to write a book now. She's going to write a book now.
I'm sorry.
So she may make some money, but her previous book made $70,000. What?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say Jean.
And that's what they say. This is a big Democrats conspiracy. The Democrats are after them. The judicial system is corrupt.
70 million people believe that?
I think a lot of people
60
do
million
believe it.
believe
It's
that?
interesting how when there was talk from the Black Lives Matter movement, this was a bad phrase, the defund the police thing.
Yeah.
I wish they'd never said that.
Yeah.
But now Republicans want to defund the FBI.
Department of Justice
so
and
we
the
never
FBI.
should have said defund the cops, the
That's an
Republicans
excellent
say.
point.
But now it's okay to defund the FBI, and this is all a conspiracy in the Department of Justice Department. That's what they're saying. It's all.
Well, I guess you're
Rick
right.
Steve said it. And this is what all authoritarians do, right?
Yes. You discredit all institutions
You
that
discredit
matter.
the government, the press, the
Gina-
Supreme Court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Gino in Salem, hi. You got to turn the radio down, Gino. Okay, Gino, we'll put you on hold. We'll get to you in a minute. I think most people know when you call our show, because there's a brief delay, you got to turn your radio down or else we hear ourselves, which is not good for anybody. Peter in Hopedale, what's up?
Hi there.
Hi, what's up?
I'm originally British, but I've lived in America for 40 years.
Great.
And my relatives and friends in Europe can't believe how gullible Americans
Peter,
are.
you are my hero. Take as long as you want. I am so with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this guy has made his entire life is to be a cheat and a crook. And I would be ashamed to say that I support him. And I think all our politicians who know better and are supporting him should be ashamed of themselves.
Well,
because
Peter,
by association, they're as big a crook as he is.
Peter, I love you and all your family members who are back in the UK. Thank you for
But
that
here what he
call.
says, they're gullible. That they believe it. That's what it means,
Well,
right?
yeah.
You're
Well,
always
whatever it
telling
is,
me I'm gullible.
You are occasionally. And
Only Jim has that laser vision.
well, except remember we both humiliated ourselves with Andrew Cabral yesterday on that decision on the Alabama redistricting
well, I've
case.
humiliated myself a lot.
Well, so have I. We should keep a record of humiliations and who wins month by month.
Is this Jim from Rockport? Is this the gentleman that just texted me and I
Oh,
read
it
his
is.
text?
Oh, hey,
Oh,
Jim.
my goodness.
It is.
Double whammy.
It's like a twofer, right?
Yeah.
What's up?
Well, it is Jim from Rockport. Now, you didn't agree. Jim, you didn't agree with what I said.
That's right.
What'd you say again?
Give it to him, Jim.
It's a long time ago. What'd you say?
The American people on his side want to believe the con. Just like in love or money over the internet, people get ripped off. The American people are not as bright as you think they are, Jim, anymore. They don't want to look at magazines. They don't want to look at news. They just want to believe, like any good con, that it's true. And that's all they don't want to look into anything else.
How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel, Jim?
It makes me furious that this country's in a lot of trouble.
That's how I feel.
But you know something, Jim? I always like to say when people say that people aren't as smart as they think they are, I do know people that are really smart, people that have read more than I will ever read in my entire life of history, 1,000-page books about history, and they say they're not in the Trump camp, but they are in the Trump camp. There's something appealing about him. People like that. There's a lot of people, frankly, are racist, and he's brought that out in people.
Well, it's also remember when we, Jim, thank you for calling and texting or whatever else
a
you
lot
did.
of people don't like women,
Do you
and he's
remember
brought that out in people.
2016, we've told the story, but not recently, Marty and I went to New Hampshire, as we have every 4 years, for primary season. We would ask people who are uncommitted, who were they deciding between?
Right.
And the most common answer was what?
They were trying to decide between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
And why was that?
Because they're both populists.
Yeah.
And they were both promising they were going to be good to you, and they were going to lower your taxes, and they were going to get you Medicare, and they were going to get you reasonably priced drugs, and
they
all
were
these
angry
kinds
at
of
the
things.
same institutions
That's
you
right.
were angry in. One was legit and one was a fraud.
Right.
So I buy your notion that in 2016, a lot of people who feel they've been treated poorly by big institutions would gravitate to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy, after 4 years, criminal indictments, liability for sexual abuse, 24 credible
as I keep
arguments
saying
that
to
they
you,
were sexually harassed.
Joe Biden beat him. And why you think Joe Biden was not, despite all the tumbles of Joe Biden
care
and
about his
his
tumbles at
age
all.
and the gaffes and all that kind of stuff, I just think if Trump is a Republican nominee, he'll lose by a lot.
Daniel in Somerville, thanks for calling. You have a minute and a half, or a minute or something, whatever.
Hey guys,
Go ahead.
I
Hi.
think that, I think a lot of our leaders, Democrat and Republican, have been corrupt over many years and have done a lot of bad things. So I get why people say, I think what Trump has done is worse, but I get why people say, well, he's a crook, but they're all crooks, so we're still going to vote for him. And I don't know. I think a lot of our institutions have discredited themselves by being this way, and Trump is kind of a natural conclusion.
Yeah, the only thing is, Daniel, I hear that a lot too. I don't think a lot of them are crooks. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who actually, they're not making money, they're doing good things. I mean, there's a lot of senators that probably have done insider trading and all these things that they shouldn't have done. Maybe there are a lot of people in the Senate, but I don't buy they're all crooks thing. I've known too many.
Also, everything is relative. Even if their perception is right, and I'm with Marjorie, Daniel, on this, and thank you for the call. And let's assume Hunter Biden has done everything horrible that he's accused of. To my knowledge, he has not attempted to steal a presidential election. He has not done anything close to what Donald Trump's accused of. So there is a false equivalency thing, which a lot of us fell prey to in the Clinton-Trump race in 2016. But regardless, that's where we are. We're out of time, Marjorie.
We are out of time. Okay. Well,
by the way, CNN's reporting there are additional charges against both Trump and his associate Walt Nauta. The unsealed indictment in the New York Times says that Trump stored boxes containing classified documents, including in a ballroom, a bathroom, a shower, as well as in his office and bedroom. His lawyers had told investigators the documents were kept only in a storage room. So the story is far from over.
Some of his lawyers are going to be in trouble, too, for lying under oath.
Why do you think they're abandoning ship?
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to people that came down here to the Boston Public Library. We really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed today's show. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. On Monday, we're going to have Embrace Boston CEO Amari Paris Jeffries will join us ahead of this year's Embrace Ideas Festival. We'll tell you all about that. We're also going to talk with the NAACP's Michael Curry, the Reverends Iron Monroe and Emmett G. Price III for All Revved Up. Frontline's A.C. Thomas with his latest documentary, America's Dangerous Trucks, all about these oversized cars and trucks a lot of us are driving around in, and stand-up comedian John Early ahead of his show at the Wilbur Theater. I want to thank our crew, Chelsea Mers. Why did I say that? She used to be our producer about 4 years ago. Yep, just popped up there. Actually, our producer's right next to me. He's the executive
Whoever
producer.
He is.
His name is Jamie Bologna. Chelsea Mers used to be here. Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker. And as always, want to thank our staff here at the Boston Public Library, Evelyn Brito, Colin Cockrell, Matthew Glover, and Sandra Lopez Burke.
Can I quickly just read you something, if I may? A federal judge in Florida has unsealed the indictment of Trump, 49 pages.